At my son's wedding, his bride cornered me by the gift table. She leaned in close, her white veil brushing my shoulder, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "This is your last chance, old man. Buy us the house on West Lake." I just looked at her. I'm Isaiah Thorne, 75 years old, and I've seen too much to be rattled by a 28-year-old girl in a rented dress. She saw my silence and sneered. "You think I'm joking? If you don't agree right now, I will walk onto that stage, take the microphone, and tell everyone I'm pregnant." She leaned in even closer, her champagne-scented breath hitting my face. "And I'll tell them the baby is yours." A sick, desperate threat. She thought I was a poor, frail old man she could shatter. She thought I would crumble. I just stared at her, my face calm. I didn't say a word. I simply slowly reached into the inner pocket of my old suit jacket. Chloe's eyes lit up just for a second. She thought I was reaching for a checkbook. But what I pulled out wasn't money. It was a single folded piece of paper. I unfolded it and held it up for her to see. Her eyes scanned the text. The smile on her face didn't just fade, it shattered. Her face went pale, a sickly white that clashed with her heavy makeup. She looked at the paper, then back at me, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. And then she screamed. It was a raw, terrified shriek that ripped through the joyful music. The band stopped playing. 200 guests turned to look. The wedding was over, and it was time for the truth. Before we continue this story, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to show someone the true meaning of consequences. That night at the wedding, that was the end of the story. The beginning. The beginning was 3 months earlier on a quiet Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table in the same small 2-bedroom house I'd lived in for 50 years. The neighborhood had seen better days, but it was my neighborhood. I was sipping my coffee and going over my ledgers. Not my retirement statements from the post office. No, these were the rent ledgers for the 3 apartment buildings and the small retail block I owned just 6 blocks over. My son Marcus never knew. To him, I was just dad. A retired mailman living off a government pension. I liked it that way. My late wife Evelyn always said, "Isaiah, wealth you show off just buys you trouble. Wealth you keep quiet buys you freedom." Evelyn was right about everything. The phone rang, breaking the morning silence. I saw Marcus's name on the screen. I smiled and picked up. "Hey, son. How's the world treating you?" "Dad." "Hey, Dad." His voice was high nervous. I knew that tone. It was the same tone he used at 15 when he dented my old Buick. "So, I've got some big news, Dad. Really big." "That sounds good, Marcus. What is it?" There was a long pause, a deep breath. I'm getting married." A genuine smile spread across my face. "Well, that's wonderful news, son, 40 years old. It's about time you settled down." Yeah. He laughed, but the nervousness didn't go away. "Her name is Chloe. She's amazing, Dad. She's smart, beautiful. She's white, Dad. I just wanted you to know." I sighed. My son always worried about the wrong things. "Marcus," I said gently, "I don't care if she's green with purple polka dots. All I care about is if she's a good woman. Does she treat you right? She's the best, Dad. She's from a different world. She's used to nice things, you know, but she's so excited to meet you. She really is. Can we come by for dinner on Sunday? I want her to meet you properly." "Of course, son," I said. "My door is always open, you know that." "Great. Thanks, Dad. We'll see you Sunday. Love you." He hung up. I looked back down at my ledgers, at the steady, solid numbers that represented a lifetime of quiet work and careful investment. I looked around my humble kitchen with its peeling linoleum and old refrigerator. "A different world," Marcus had said. I had a feeling I was about to find out just how different. Sunday arrived faster than I wanted. I spent the morning making my famous sweet potato pies and a slow-cooked brisket. The house filled with the warm, rich smells of home. I put on a clean, pressed shirt. I was nervous not for me, but for Marcus. I wanted to like this woman, who had finally captured his heart. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there was Marcus wearing a suit I'd never seen before, looking stiff and uncomfortable. And behind him was Chloe. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. tall blonde with blue eyes so bright they looked almost artificial. She wore a simple white dress that I knew from my days walking my mail route past high-end boutiques cost at least $1,000. A designer handbag hung from her arm, the logo discreet but unmistakable. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice strained. "This is Chloe. Chloe, this is my father Isaiah." I smiled warmly and extended my hand. "It is a true pleasure to meet you, Chloe. Marcus has told me so much about you." Chloe looked at my hand for a half-second before taking it. Her grip was limp cold. "Mr. Thorne," she said. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. "Please come in. Come in, dinner's almost ready." Marcus shuffled inside, but Chloe paused at the doorway. Her eyes did a quick, cold sweep of my living room. I saw her take in the old, comfortable armchair Evelyn and I had bought in 1993. I saw her look at the framed photos on the wall, the worn rug, the small, non-flat screen TV in the corner. Her polished smile faltered. I saw clear as day the micro-expression. It was a flicker of disgust instantly hidden. She had been expecting more. She had been expecting the father of a 40-year-old manager to have something better than this. "Oh, Marcus," she said, her voice like smooth, cold glass. "Your father's home is just so cozy." The word cozy hung in the air, a polite little dagger. It was the word people use when they mean small, old, and poor. Marcus, bless his heart, didn't catch the venom. He just heard the word. "Yeah, it is right. Smells great in here, Dad." We sat at the old oak table. I served the brisket and the pie. Marcus dug in, but Chloe just pushed the food around on her plate. "This is lovely, Isaiah," she said, taking a tiny bite. "I just have a very sensitive stomach. I usually stick to simpler foods, salads, imported fish." "Oh, I see," I said. "Well, this is just simple brisket, cooked for 8 hours. Sensing the awkwardness, I tried to fill the silence. "This old house isn't much to look at," I said, gesturing around the room. "But it holds a lot of memories. My late wife Evelyn and I. We bought it back in '78. We saw this neighborhood through the worst of times and the best of times. Evelyn, she was the smart one. She always said, 'Isaiah, don't waste money on shiny things that fade. You invest in bricks and community, something that lasts.'" At the word invest, Chloe's eyes finally lit up, a real, genuine spark. "Oh," she said, leaning forward, "you have investments, Isaiah." I smiled, seeing the hook. "Oh, just a little something put away. The post office has a decent pension plan. A man has to be prepared." She relaxed, her interest gone. A pension. To her, that was just more old poor man talk. But she had her opening. "Well, that's just so wise," she said, pulling out her phone. "Speaking of preparing, Marcus and I were just looking at our dream house." She turned the phone around. It wasn't a house. It was a glass and steel box perched on a hillside with a pool that seemed to hang in midair. It screamed new money and bad foundation. "It's just listed for $500,000, she said, her voice casual but her eyes sharp, fixed on me. Marcus looked embarrassed. "Chloe, honey, we talked about this. It's too expensive." "It's not too expensive, baby," she cooed, not taking her eyes off me. "It's an investment, and we're so close. With your job and, well, my student loans are a bit of a hassle." She placed her hand on my old, worn table. "If only we had a little push, you know." The silence that followed was heavy. The demand was clear. She wasn't just showing me a picture, she was showing me a price tag. "A significant wedding gift, perhaps," she added, her smile all teeth. "To show you support us." I looked at this girl who had been in my house for less than an hour, who had insulted my food, my home, and my wife's memory, and was now asking me for $500,000. I maintained my composure. I gave her that slow smile, the one I used to give customers on my mail route who had a barking dog behind the fence. "That's a beautiful house, Chloe. Truly. You two should start saving for it right away." I stood up, signaling dinner was over. "Saving is the key. My Evelyn and I, we saved for 10 years to buy this very house. It makes you appreciate it more when you've earned it with your own sweat." The smile on Chloe's face didn't just tighten, it vanished. The mask was gone. In its place was a flash of cold, hard anger. She thought the old retired mailman would be an easy mark, a sentimental fool she could guilt trip. She was wrong. "Of course," she said, her voice suddenly flat. "How wise." She stood up, grabbing her expensive bag and pulling Marcus up by the arm. "Thank you for the brisket, Isaiah. We really must be going." They were out the door in less than a minute. I stood in my living room, the smell of sweet potato pie still hanging in the air. I closed the door, locked the deadbolt, and walked back to the kitchen table. I looked at the rent ledgers, at the steady, solid numbers that represented my real life. "Oh, Evelyn," I whispered to the empty room. "I think this one is going to be trouble." I watched Chloe pushing her brisket around the plate. She was trying so hard to hide her disappointment and failing miserably. Sensing the awkward silence, I decided to fill it, not for her, but for Marcus. "This old house isn't much to look at, I suppose," I said, gesturing to the living room. "Not compared to the new places they're building up on the hill." Chloe gave a tight little smile. "It's very authentic, Isaiah. It's a house of memories," I said, my voice softening. I looked at the empty chair at the head of the table. "My late wife Evelyn and I, we bought this place back in '78. We saved for 10 years to get the down payment. 10 years. I looked at Chloe. Her eyes were already starting to glaze over. She didn't care about history. She cared about assets. Evelyn, she was the smart one. I continued more for myself than for them. She always said, "Isaiah, don't you waste our hard-earned money on shiny things that fade. You invest in bricks and community, something that lasts." And that's what we did. This house is where we raised Marcus. This table is where he did his homework. At the word invest, Chloe's eyes suddenly lit up. The boredom vanished, replaced by a sharp, genuine spark. "Oh," she said, leaning forward. "You have investments, Isaiah." I saw the hook and I saw the shark circling. I chuckled, playing the part she expected. "Oh, just a little something put away. The post office has a decent pension plan. A man has to be prepared for his old age." She relaxed again, the predatory light dimming. A pension. To her, that was just more old poor man talk. But she had her opening and she was going to take it. "Well, that's just so wise," she said, pulling out her expensive smartphone. "Speaking of preparing for the future, Marcus and I were just looking at our dream house." She turned the phone around. It wasn't a house. It was a glass and steel box perched on a hillside with one of those infinity pools that seemed to hang in midair. It screamed new money and a bad foundation. "It's just listed for $500,000, she said. Her voice was casual, but her eyes were sharp, fixed on me. Marcus looked embarrassed. He knew what was coming. "Chloe, honey, we talked about this. It's way too expensive." "It's not too expensive, baby," she cooed, never taking her eyes off me. "It's an investment, and we're so close. With your job and, well, my student loans are a bit of a hassle." She placed her perfectly manicured hand on my old, worn oak table. "If only we had a little push. You know." The silence that followed was heavy. The demand was clear. She wasn't just showing me a picture, she was showing me a price tag. "A significant wedding gift, perhaps," she added, her smile all teeth. "To show you support us." I looked at this girl, this stranger. She had been in my house for less than an hour. She had insulted my food, my home, and my wife's memory, and now she was asking me for $500,000. I maintained my composure. I gave her that slow smile, the one I used to give customers on my mail route who had a barking dog behind the fence, all noise and no bite. "That's a beautiful house, Chloe. Truly," I said, my voice gentle. I saw her and Marcus lean in, expecting the "but" to be followed by a "how much do you need?" I picked up my glass of water. "You two should start saving for it right away." The shift in the room was immediate. Chloe's smile froze. Marcus looked down at his plate. I stood up, signaling dinner was over. Saving is the key. My Evelyn and I, we saved for 10 years just to get the down payment for this very house. It makes you appreciate it more when you've earned it with your own sweat. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I went about my business. I tended to Evelyn's roses out back. I swept the porch. I went over my ledgers, the familiar comforting scrape of my pen on the paper. But I was waiting. Every time the phone rang, my heart would seize up in my chest. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for the truth. On Friday afternoon, it finally came. "Isaiah," Jamal's voice said. It wasn't the voice of my friend, the man I played chess with. It was the voice of my lawyer. It was cold, professional, and tired. Jay, you found something. I found a hornet's nest, Isaiah. You were right to call. I ran the preliminary financial check on Miss Chloe Jensen. He let out a long sigh. She's not just in debt, my friend. She is drowning. I sat down heavily in Evelyn's armchair. Tell me. All right, Jay said. Let's start with the credit cards. She has 5. 5 maxed out credit cards. And we're not talking about gas cards, Isaiah. We're talking Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, a total revolving balance of just over $42,000. She hasn't just missed the last payment. She's missed the last 3 payments on all of them. The interest alone is piling up faster than she can blink. I closed my eyes. 42,000, just on clothes and bags. It gets better, Jay continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Her car. That shiny white Lexus she drove to your house, it's a lease, of course. A lease she is 4 months behind on. It's scheduled for repossession next Tuesday. She's been dodging the repo man for 3 weeks. And I thought about her turning her nose up at my home, the home Evelyn and I had paid for in cash with our own sweat. And now, the big one, Jay said. Student loans. She listed a degree from a fancy private university in Oregon. She did attend for 2 semesters. She dropped out, but not before racking up $110,000 in private student loans. She hasn't made a single payment on them. They're in default. I did the math in my head, my old mailman brain still sharp. That's over $150,000, Jay. $152,000 to be precise, and climbing, Jay confirmed. Isaiah with the part-time job she claims to have at that art gallery. She's not just broke, she is desperate. This isn't just a woman with debt. This is a cornered animal. And cornered animals do dangerous things. I was silent for a long time, just listening to the hum of my old refrigerator. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt angry. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for my son. Jay, I said, my voice quiet. That's a mountain of money, but is that it? Is she just a girl who's bad with money? I heard Jay shift in his chair on the other end of the line. What do you mean, is that it? Isaiah, the woman is a financial black hole. She's marrying your son in less than 3 months. She's not just bringing love, she's bringing $150,000 of debt he'll be on the hook for. I know, Jay, I know, I said, rubbing my temples. But she's just a kid, 28 years old. These young folks, they get these loans pushed on them. They're told to buy things to look successful on social media. It's a different world, Jay. I remember when Evelyn and I couldn't even get a $20 line of credit for a new toaster at Sears. Maybe she just made some terrible choices. Maybe she's just in over her head and she's scared. I was making excuses. I knew I was, but I had to, because if she was just a foolish, desperate girl, then my son was just a fool for love, and I could forgive that. I could understand that. Maybe she thinks Marcus can save her, I said, mostly to myself. Maybe she's just looking for a life raft, Jay. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could almost hear my friend shaking his head. Isaiah, Jamal said, his voice softer now but heavier. I wish it were that simple. I truly do. What do you mean? I told you that was the preliminary report. While we were talking, I was running her social security number through a deeper database. He paused. Jay, what is it? Isaiah, the social security number she gave Marcus, the one on their rental application, the one on her bank forms, it belongs to a woman in Portland, Oregon, a woman named Chloe Jensen, who died in 1997. I heard you, Marcus. You've made your feelings very clear. You're embarrassed. The gift doesn't even cover the flowers. I understand. So, will you fix it? He asked. His voice was suddenly hopeful, like a child who knows he's pushed too far but still expects a treat. I have to go, Marcus, I said. My voice was flat, empty. It's late. But Dad, what about... I hung up the phone. I didn't move. I sat there in the dark in Evelyn's old armchair for a long, long time. The house was silent, but it was a different kind of silence. It wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a coming storm. The love I felt for my son was still there, of course. It would always be there. But it was now competing with a cold, clear-eyed anger. He wasn't just being foolish, he was being cruel, and he was being used. Chloe wasn't just a girl from a different world, she was a predator, and she had just mistaken me, the shepherd, for one of the sheep. She had hurt my son, corrupted him with her greed, and now she had made the fatal mistake of hurting me. My hurt wasn't the loud, crying kind. My hurt was the kind that gets quiet, the kind that gets patient, the kind that starts to plan. I picked up the phone again. My hands were perfectly steady. I dialed the number I knew by heart, the one I hadn't called in months. It rang twice. A deep, clear voice answered on the other end. "You know it's almost midnight, right, Isaiah?" "Jamal," I said. "It's me." The sleepiness in his voice vanished instantly. Jamal J. Green had been my best friend for 50 years. He was the man I played chess with every Thursday, and he was the only lawyer in the world who knew the truth about my finances. "What's wrong?" Jay asked. His voice was all business now. "You only call this late when the sky is falling." "It might be," I said, my voice low and even. "I need you to check on someone for me." "I'm listening." "A woman. Her name is Chloe Jensen. She's marrying my son." There was a pause. Jay knew me. He knew what this meant. "What kind of check, Isaiah? The normal kind or the thorough kind?" I looked out the window at the dark street my wife and I had worked so hard to own. "I want to know everything, Jay," I said, my voice cold as ice. "I want to know where she's from. I want to know who her parents really are. I want to know where she went to school. I want to know how much she owes and exactly who she owes it to." "That'll cost you," Jay said. It wasn't a warning, just a fact. "I don't care," I replied. "Spare no expense. Find out everything." The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I went about my business. I tended to Evelyn's roses out back. I swept the porch. I went over my ledgers, the familiar, comforting scrape of my pen on the paper. But I was waiting. Every time the phone rang, my heart would seize up in my chest. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting for the truth. On Friday afternoon, it finally came. "Isaiah," Jamal's voice said. It wasn't the voice of my friend, the man I played chess with every Thursday. It was the voice of my lawyer. It was cold, professional, and tired. "Jay, you found something." "I found a hornet's nest, Isaiah. You were right to call." He let out a long sigh. "I ran the preliminary financial check on Miss Chloe Jensen." I sat down heavily in Evelyn's old armchair. "Tell me." "All right," Jay said. "She's not just in debt, my friend. She is drowning. Let's start with the credit cards. She has five maxed out credit cards. And we're not talking about gas cards, Isaiah. We're talking high-end retail. Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom. A total revolving balance of just over $42,000. I closed my eyes. $42,000, just on clothes and designer bags. I pictured the suit Marcus was wearing when he'd yelled at me. It wasn't his style, it was her style. Jamal continued. "She hasn't just missed the last payment. She's missed the last 3 payments on all of them. The interest alone is piling up faster than she can blink." "It gets better," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Her car, that shiny white Lexus she drove to your house. I saw it," I said, remembering how it looked parked in front of my peeling paint. "It's a lease, of course. A lease she is 4 months behind on. It's scheduled for repossession next Tuesday. She's been dodging the repo man for 3 weeks. I thought about her turning her nose up at my home, the home Evelyn and I had paid for in cash with our own sweat. And now, the big one, Jay said. Student loans. She listed a degree from a fancy private university in Oregon. She did attend for 2 semesters. She dropped out, but not before racking up $110,000 in private student loans. She hasn't made a single payment on them. They're in default. I did the math in my head, my old mailman brain still sharp. That's over $150,000, Jay. $152,000 to be precise. And climbing, Jay confirmed. Isaiah with the part-time job she claims to have at that art gallery. She's not just broke. She is desperate. This isn't just a woman with debt. This is a cornered animal. And cornered animals do dangerous things. I was silent for a long time. I just listened to the hum of my old refrigerator in the kitchen. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt angry. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for my son. Jay, I said, my voice quiet. That's a mountain of money. But is that it? Is she just a girl who's bad with money? Jamal was silent on the other end of the line, letting me talk. I mean it, I insisted. I'm serious. She's just a kid, 28 years old. These young folks, they get these loans pushed on them. They're told to buy things to look successful on social media. It's a different world than when we were coming up, Jay. I looked at a picture of Evelyn on the mantle. I remember when Evelyn and I couldn't even get a $20 line of credit for a new toaster at Sears. Maybe she just made some terrible choices. Maybe she's just in over her head and she's scared. I was making excuses. I knew I was. But I had to, because if she was just a foolish, desperate girl, then my son was just a fool for love, and I could forgive that. I could understand that. Maybe she thinks Marcus can save her, I said mostly to myself. Maybe she's just looking for a life raft, Jay. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could almost hear my friend shaking his head. Isaiah, Jamal said, his voice softer now but heavier. I wish it were that simple. I truly do. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, is that it? I told you that was the preliminary report, Jay said. While we were talking, I was running her social security number through a deeper database. He paused. The silence stretched. Jay, what is it? What did you find? Jamal took a deep breath. Isaiah, the social security number she gave Marcus. The one on their rental application. The one on her bank forms. What about it? It belongs to a woman in Portland, Oregon, a woman named Chloe Jensen, who died in 1997. The line went dead quiet. I could hear my own heart, a slow, heavy thud in my chest. What did you just say, Jay? I'm saying, Jamal's voice was low, hard as steel, that the social security number she's using belongs to a dead person, a child who died in Portland, Oregon in 1997. The air left my lungs. This was something else entirely. This wasn't debt. This wasn't bad choices. This was a crime. This was identity theft. I don't understand, I whispered, my mind racing. How is that possible? Wouldn't someone have noticed the banks? Her job. She's smart, Jay said. Or maybe just lucky. She's been using it to build a thin credit profile just enough to get by to open the cards to get the lease. But it's a house of cards, Isaiah, and it's all fake. My sadness for the scared girl evaporated, replaced by a chilling cold. The excuses I had just made for her, how foolish they sounded now. A fool for love. No, my son wasn't a fool for love. He was a target. Her family, I said, my voice hardening. What about her parents, the ones Marcus met, the ones from Oregon? That's the next part, Jay said. There is no Jensen family in Oregon, not like the one she described. I ran a search. The address she gave Marcus for her family home. It's a vacant lot, has been for 20 years. Her university, the one she dropped out of, they have no record of a Chloe Jensen or the dead girl's social security number ever being enrolled. It was a complete fabrication. Her entire life, everything she had told my son was a lie. The girl who had sat at my table turning her nose up at my wife's recipes. She wasn't just a snob. She was an imposter. A ghost. So, who is she? I asked. That's the million-dollar question, Isaiah, Jamal replied. Right now, I don't know. What I do know is that she's a professional. This isn't her first time. She built a new identity, came to this city, and found her mark. And her mark is Marcus. My blood, which had run cold with shock, now began to run hot with a quiet, dangerous rage. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't about a son being embarrassed by his poor father. This was about protecting my blood. This woman, this stranger, had her hooks in my only son. She was planning to marry him, to tie him to her fake life, her mountain of debt, her criminal past. And she had the nerve to ask me for $500,000. She wasn't just trying to get a gift. She was trying to cash out before her world collapsed. Isaiah, you still there? Jay's voice pulled me back. I stood up from Evelyn's chair. I walked to the window and looked out at my street, my neighborhood, the homes I owned, the community I had built. Everything I had worked for, everything Evelyn and I had sacrificed for, it was all for him, for Marcus. And I would not let this nobody take him down. My voice when I finally spoke was calm. It was the calmest I had felt all week. The doubt was gone. The sadness was gone. All that was left was clarity. "Jay," I said, "I'm here. The preliminary check is over. Now the real work begins." "What are you thinking, Isaiah?" "I'm thinking this isn't a job for a lawyer sitting behind a desk anymore. I need eyes on her. I need to know who she really is." I took a breath. "I want you to hire a private investigator, the best one you can find. I don't care what it costs." "A PI, Isaiah, that's a big step." "Are you sure?" "Don't spare any expense, Jay." I cut him off. "I want to know everything. I want to know where she really came from. I want to know her real name. I want to know if she has a family. I want to know every man she's ever known, every dollar she's ever conned. I want to know what she eats for breakfast and who she talks to in her sleep. I want to know everything." "Isaiah, this could get messy," Jay warned. "It's already messy," I said. "She made it messy when she lied to my son. She made it messy when she tried to use me as her personal bank account. She just doesn't know how messy it's about to get for her." I looked at the picture of Evelyn on the mantel. She was smiling as always. "Evelyn always said, 'Don't start a fight, Isaiah, but you sure as hell better finish it.'" "All right," Jay said, his voice matching my own resolve. "I know a guy. He's expensive, but he's a ghost. She'll never even know he's there." "Good," I said. "Tell him I want a full report before that wedding day. I need to know exactly who and what my son is marrying." I hung up the phone. The trap had been set, but not for me. It had been set for her, and I was about to let her walk right into it. The restaurant Marcus chose was called Le Chateau. It was the kind of place so expensive the menus didn't have prices, just elegant descriptions in French. I knew this because I owned the building, but they didn't need to know that. Not yet. Marcus had called me his voice tight with that anxiety he always got around Chloe. "Dad, Chloe's parents are in town. They want to take us all out to dinner. Friday, at Le Chateau. Please, Dad. This is important to me." "Of course, son," I'd said. "Whatever you need." I knew what this was. This was the next act in the play. I walked in wearing my best suit. It was clean, it was pressed, and it was 20 years old. They were already at the table, a high-backed booth in the corner like royalty holding court. Marcus looked like he was about to face a firing squad. Chloe was beaming, dressed in red silk, looking like the cat that had just swallowed the canary. And then there were the parents. They looked exactly like I expected. Franklin and Veronica. He wore a suit that probably cost more than my first car, with a thick gold watch that caught the light. She was dripping in diamonds that glittered under the chandelier, her hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Isaiah, so wonderful to finally meet you," Veronica said. She didn't stand up. She just offered me 2 fingers instead of a handshake. "Chloe has told us so much about you." "Franklin," the man said, his handshake firm but instantly dismissive. "Good of you to join us." The dinner began. It wasn't a meal, it was a performance. For the next hour, I was subjected to the most obnoxious, condescending display of arrogance I had ever witnessed. They weren't just talking to me, they were talking at me. They were trying to build a wall of money and class between us to make me feel small, to make me feel unworthy of breathing the same air as their precious daughter. "This wine," Franklin said, swirling the dark red liquid in his glass, "it's a 95 Bordeaux. We picked it up on our last trip to France, of course. We find the domestic wines just lack complexity, don't you think, Isaiah?" I, who was perfectly happy with a cold beer on my own porch, just nodded. "I wouldn't know, sir. My tastes are simpler." "Of course," Veronica chimed in, a little pitying laugh in her voice. "Simpler is fine. It's just that when you've seen the world, when you've summered in the Hamptons and skied in Gstaad, you develop a certain standard." She looked at my old suit. "It's a burden, really, being so particular." "Chloe tells us you worked for the post office," Franklin said, cutting into his steak with a little too much force. "A mailman. How quaint. Good honest work, I'm sure. Must have kept you fit all that walking." "It kept me busy," I said. "And now, retirement." Veronica sighed dramatically. "It must be so quiet. What does one do all day? I simply couldn't imagine." Our days are just packed with managing the trusts, the portfolios, the properties in Oregon. I saw Marcus sink lower in his chair, his face red with shame. Not shame for them, shame for me. He was embarrassed by his simple retired father. That was the cut that hurt the most. I looked around the opulent room, the high ceilings, the crystal chandeliers, the dark velvet curtains. I knew this building. I knew it very well. I knew the plumbing in the basement was over 100 years old and that the wiring on the third floor needed to be redone. I decided to play along. "You know," I said, interrupting Franklin's story about his yacht, "you two picked a fine establishment, a truly fine establishment." They stopped, surprised I had spoken. "Oh yes," Chloe said quickly, sensing an opportunity to praise her parents. "It's the best, only the best for my family." "I've always been fond of this building," I said, looking up at the ornate ceiling. "The architecture is pre-war. Solid bones. They don't build them like this anymore. A lot of history in these walls." Franklin looked amused, like a king observing a court jester. "Is that so? An architecture buff, are we, Isaiah?" I smiled a gentle, harmless smile. "No, just a proud owner. I bought this building back in 1982. Best investment I ever made. The ground floor retail space alone," I said, gesturing to the restaurant we were in, "pays for the upkeep on 6 of my other properties." The table went dead silent. I saw Marcus freeze a fork halfway to his mouth. Chloe's eyes narrowed, trying to figure out the angle. Then Veronica, she laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was a high-pitched, pitying cackle that made heads turn at other tables. "Oh, Isaiah, you are just delightful. What a sense of humor. Bought it in 82. Oh my!" Franklin joined in, shaking his head with a condescending chuckle. "That's a good one. Pays for 6 of my other properties. You certainly had me going for a second, old man." Marcus forced a laugh too. A high, nervous, terrible sound. "Oh, Dad, you're a riot. Always joking." They were laughing at me. They genuinely believed I was a senile old man. They thought my claim was so absurd, so far outside the realm of possibility for a simple old mailman like me that it had to be a joke. Or worse, the ramblings of a failing mind. "Yes," I said, smiling right back at them, not a hint of malice in my eyes. "A real riot." The rest of the dinner was worse. Now they weren't just treating me as poor, they were treating me as pitiful as the confused old father. But the real attack came as the dessert plates were cleared. Franklin leaned forward, his act as the jovial rich man gone replaced by a cold seriousness. "Isaiah, we're glad we had this chance to meet, because as a family we're worried." "Worried?" I asked, playing my part. "Worried about Marcus and Chloe," Veronica said, placing her hand on Chloe's. "We love our daughter, and we want her to have the life she deserves, the life we gave her, the life she is accustomed to." "She does deserve a good life," I said. "Which brings us," Franklin said, his eyes like little chips of ice, "to the matter of the wedding. Specifically, the gifts." The laughter from my joke died down. It was a brittle, uncomfortable sound. Franklin, the man playing Dad, carefully placed his wine glass on the table. The smile was gone. His face settled into a mask of serious paternal concern. This was it. The real reason for this expensive charade. The entire dinner, the talk of vineyards and yachts, the condescending questions. It had all been a performance leading to this single moment. "Isaiah," Franklin began. His voice dropped to a low, serious tone, the kind a man uses when he's about to talk about wills and inheritances. "We're glad we had this chance to meet, because as a family, well, we're a little worried." I put on my best confused old man face. "Worried about what? The steak was fine, wasn't it?" Veronica, the woman playing Mom, jumped in, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Oh no, dear, not about the food. The food was adequate. We're worried about Marcus and Chloe, about their future." She placed her hand heavy with diamonds on Chloe's. "We love our daughter. We want her to have the life she deserves, the life we gave her, the life she is accustomed to." "She does deserve a good life," I said, my voice mild. "Marcus, too. He's a good boy." "Which brings us to the problem," Franklin said, leaning in as if sharing a heavy secret. "Chloe showed us that lovely house they're looking at, the one on West Lake." He shook his head with a theatrical sigh. "A wonderful starter home. But $500,000, it's a lot of money, and Marcus's salary, while good for his position, well, it's just not enough to get the loan." The banks are so strict these days. Veronica picked up the cue perfectly. We've done our part, of course. We've offered a $100,000 gift for the down payment. We always support our children. She then looked directly at me, her eyes sharp and cold. But that still leaves a $400,000 mortgage, and the banks simply won't approve them, not without a cosigner. The table went dead silent. A cosigner, of course. They didn't just want a gift. A gift was finite. A co-signature, that was a chain. They wanted to chain me my name and my credit, which they assumed was small but clean to their mountain of lies. They wanted to guarantee their fraud using my lifetime of honest work. Chloe looked down at her lap, the very picture of a disappointed, hopeful daughter. Marcus was staring at the breadbasket as if it held the secrets to the universe. He was trapped, he was ashamed, and he was letting it happen. I let the silence stretch. I picked up my water glass. I made sure my hand trembled just a little. A touch of age, a touch of nerves. Franklin, Veronica, I said. My voice sounded old and frail even to my own ears. That's a terrible amount of money, $400,000. It's just a signature, Isaiah, Franklin said a little too quickly. A formality to show the bank that Marcus has, backing, family support. I shook my head slowly, looking at my hands on the table. I don't think I can. I don't think I... Chloe's head snapped up. Her blue eyes were suddenly sharp. What do you mean you can't? I'm a retired mailman, child, I said, playing my part to the hilt. I have my pension, I have this house, that's it, my signature. It wouldn't be worth the paper it's written on for a loan that size. The bank, they'd laugh me right out of the building. Veronica sneered. It was tiny, but I saw it. The mask had slipped. Oh, we're not worried about your net worth, Isaiah. It's the gesture. It's about showing that both sides of the family are contributing. We put up $100,000 in cash. You just need to show your support. This was it, the final turn. They had dismissed my poverty excuse. Now it was time for the principal excuse. No, I said. It was just one word. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just final. No. Chloe repeated, her voice rising, cracking the elegant atmosphere of the restaurant. No, I said again, looking right at her. I'm sorry, but I have a policy. It's an old man's rule, but it's one I've lived by. My late wife Evelyn and I, we made a promise to each other 50 years ago. We would never, ever co-sign a loan for anyone. Not family, not friends, not even each other. Debt is a poison, Chloe, and co-signing is just letting someone else drink from your cup while you pay the bill. I sighed, looking at my hands again. It's an old-fashioned principle, I know, but it's the only one I've got left. I can't do it. I'm sorry to disappoint you all. Chloe stared at me. Her face, which had been pale with performance, now turned a deep, blotchy red. The polite, high-class daughter was gone. The con artist who had just been denied her prize was here. You, she hissed, her voice low and shaking. You stubborn old fool. Chloe. Marcus yelped, finally looking up from the breadbasket, his face a mask of panic. No, Marcus, she shrieked. She stood up so fast her chair screeched loudly against the marble floor. Heads turned at other tables. I am sick of this. I am sick of this. This act, I asked innocently. Yes, this poor, humble mailman act. You'd rather cling to your dusty old principles than help your own son. We offered you a way to be part of this family, to contribute something for once in your life, and you spit in our faces. Chloe, please, sit down. Marcus begged, trying to pull her arm. She ripped her arm away from his grasp. Don't touch me. I'm done. She grabbed her expensive handbag. You are a selfish, useless old man. You'd rather sit in that rotting little house and count your pennies than see your son happy. I am done with this. I am done with this entire pathetic family. And with that, she turned and stormed out of the restaurant, her high heels clicking like gunshots on the floor. She left behind a trail of stunned silence. She left behind the two actors, Franklin and Veronica, who just sat there, their performance suddenly over their star performer gone. And she left my son Marcus sitting there, his head in his hands, utterly broken. I just calmly picked up my napkin from my lap and folded it, placing it beside my plate. The war had officially begun. I was in the kitchen 2 days after that disastrous dinner at Le Chateau. I hadn't heard a word from Marcus. The silence in the house was heavy, filled with unspoken things. Then a knock came at my front door. It wasn't a friendly knock. It wasn't a neighbor dropping by. It was a sharp, official 3-rap knock. The kind of knock that means business. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the door. I looked through the peephole and saw a man and a woman I didn't recognize. They were dressed in cheap polyester suits, looking impatient, and they were both holding clipboards. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" The woman, who looked like she hadn't smiled since 1990, held up a badge. "Isaiah Thorne?" she asked. Her voice was flat-tired. "I am. And you are?" "I'm Ms. Davies, and this is my colleague, Mr. Allen. We're with Adult Protective Services, Mr. Thorne. May we come in, Adult Protective Services?" The words hit me like ice water. I'd heard of them. They were the people who came when old folks couldn't take care of themselves, when their families couldn't handle them anymore. I think there must be some mistake," I stammered, genuinely confused. "We hope so, sir," Ms. Davies said, not an ounce of sympathy in her voice. "We received an anonymous report, a very concerning report. We are legally required to investigate. May we please come in?" I stepped aside, my mind racing, trying to put the pieces together. Anonymous report, concerning. It had to be her. It had to be Chloe. They stepped inside. I watched their eyes do exactly what Chloe's eyes had done. They scanned the room. They didn't see a home filled with 50 years of memories. They saw the old, comfortable armchair Evelyn and I had bought in 1993. They saw the framed photos on the wall. They saw the worn-down rug by the door. My house wasn't dirty. Evelyn had taught me how to live clean, but it was old. And in their world, old and poor looked exactly like neglect. "Please have a seat," I said, gesturing to the sofa. They ignored my offer. They stood in the middle of my living room, clipboards at the ready. Ms. Davies looked at her notes. "Mr. Thorne, we received a call from a family friend." Family friend. The venom in that phrase. "Stating that your living conditions have become unsafe, that you are exhibiting signs of severe confusion, that you are," and I'm quoting here, "living in filth and unable to care for yourself." Living in filth. I looked down at my own linoleum floor, the one I had mopped just yesterday morning. I looked at the mantelpiece where Evelyn's picture sat, dusted and clean. "Filth?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Ma'am, I don't understand. I just mopped this floor." "The report also stated you are forgetting to eat," Mr. Allen, the younger man, chimed in, his eyes darting around the room, "and that you sometimes wander the neighborhood disoriented." This was a script. Her script. Chloe's script. She wasn't just angry, she was methodical. She was building a case against me. "Ma'am," I said, my voice trembling now, and this time it wasn't all an act. "I assure you I am perfectly fine. I take my walk every morning. I know all my neighbors by name. I just had dinner with my son and his fiancée a few nights ago." "Ah, yes, your son Marcus," Ms. Davies said, her eyes snapping up from her notes. "The report mentioned him. It said he is overwhelmed by your deteriorating condition, that he is trying to get you help, but you are resistant and paranoid." Paranoid. There it was. The legal trigger word. The word they use just before they take away your rights. They were painting me as a crazy old man who was a danger to himself. "This is a terrible misunderstanding," I insisted, my heart hammering. "My son, he wouldn't—" "Mr. Thorne, would you mind if we looked at your kitchen and your bathroom?" Ms. Davies asked. It was not a request. I walked them back, feeling like a prisoner in my own home. They walked into my kitchen. They looked at the sink, which had my single breakfast dish in it. I hadn't washed it yet. "I see," Mr. Allen said, making a note on his clipboard. Ms. Davies opened my refrigerator. It was half empty. Milk, eggs, some leftovers. I'm a simple man. I shop for what I need for the day. "Not much food in here, Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice heavy with judgment. "I was planning on going to the market this afternoon," I said weakly. They moved to my bathroom. It was clean, spotless even. My medicine cabinet had my blood pressure pills and a bottle of aspirin. "The report mentioned you are not taking your medication correctly," Ms. Davies said, pointing at the bottle. "My blood pressure is perfect. I take it every morning. You can call my doctor." I said, my voice rising in frustration. They walked back to the living room. They finally sat down, their faces grim. Ms. Davies looked at me with that tired bureaucratic pity that's worse than any insult. "Mr. Thorne," she began, "this is what's going to happen. Based on our visit and the concerns raised, we are going to have to open an official file." "A file? For what?" "For having one dish in my sink. For self-neglect," she said, and the word hit me like a slap. "We will be assigning a social worker to your case. They will visit weekly. And we are recommending a full psychiatric and cognitive evaluation. We'll send you the paperwork. If you refuse to comply, then you'll use my refusal as proof that I'm paranoid and resistant," I finished for her. Ms. Davies just looked at me, her face unreadable. "We're just here to help, sir. We'll be in touch." They stood up and walked to the door, leaving the scent of cheap perfume and bureaucracy behind them. I watched them walk down my path and get into their plain government-issued sedan. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. My hands were shaking. This wasn't an insult. This wasn't a greedy girl being rude at dinner. This was a legal attack. She had failed to get the money by asking. She had failed to get it by demanding. Now she was moving to take it by force. I sank into Evelyn's armchair. I finally understood the full, terrifying picture. This wasn't just about a $500,000 house. That was just the appetizer. Chloe, no Jessica, or whatever her real name was, she wasn't just a gold digger. She was an identity thief. A professional con artist. And con artists don't just want a piece of the pie, they want the whole thing. They think I'm just a confused old mailman with a pension and a small, crumbling house. They don't know the truth. They don't know that the humble old house sits on land worth more than their fake dreams. They don't know about the apartment buildings. They don't know about the retail block that Le Chateau pays rent on. They don't know about the 50 years of work Evelyn and I poured into this community. If they could get me declared incompetent, if they could get a judge to grant Marcus guardianship, it would all be over. Marcus wouldn't even be the one in control. She would control him. She would liquidate everything. She would sell my home, evict my tenants, cash out my stocks. She would bleed my legacy dry, take my son for everything he had, and then disappear, leaving him in the ruins of the life I built for him. This wasn't just a fight for my dignity anymore. This was a fight for my life, for my legacy. The shaking in my hands stopped. The cold, clear-eyed calm returned. She wanted a war. She had just fired the first shot, a legal one. She thought she was attacking a feeble old man. She didn't realize she was attacking a king in his own castle. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Marcus. It was too late for that. He was compromised. I called the only person I could trust. "Jay," I said when he answered. "Isaiah, what is it now?" "She just sent APS to my house. They're trying to have me declared incompetent." There was a long, sharp hiss of breath on the other end of the line. "Okay," Jay said. "The gloves are off. She's not playing anymore. She's going for the kill." "I know," I said, "so we have to stop playing too." "What do you need, Isaiah?" "The private investigator. Tell him the budget is doubled. I want everything. I want it yesterday. And Jay, call the bank. Lock down every account. I want a freeze on everything that doesn't have my voice and a password, and not my old password, a new one." "What's the password?" Jay asked. I looked at the picture of my wife on the mantel. "Evelyn's roses." "Consider it done," Jay said. I hung up. I looked around my filthy house. I looked at the single dish in the sink. I walked over, picked up the sponge, and calmly began to wash it. "All right, Chloe," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to play hardball? You have no idea what hardball is." I watched them walk down my path. I watched them get into their plain, government-issued sedan. I didn't move until the car turned the corner at the end of the street and disappeared. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. My hands were shaking. But it wasn't from fear. It was from a rage so cold and so deep it felt like it was coming up from the foundations of the house itself. This wasn't a greedy girl being rude at dinner anymore. This wasn't a spoiled child asking for a handout. This was a legal attack. She had failed to get the money by asking. She had failed to get it by demanding. And now she was moving to take it by force. She was trying to strip me of my rights, my autonomy, my name. She was trying to have me declared legally incompetent. A confused old man, a ward of the state, or worse, a ward of his son, which meant a puppet for her, resistant and paranoid. Those words echoed in my head. They were the legal triggers, the words they use just before they take away your keys, your checkbook, your life. I sank into Evelyn's armchair. I finally understood the full terrifying picture. This wasn't just about a $500,000 house. That was just the appetizer. Chloe, no Jessica or whatever her real name was, she wasn't just a gold digger. She was an identity thief, a professional con artist. And con artists don't just want a piece of the pie, they want the whole thing. They think I'm just a confused old mailman with a pension and a small crumbling house. They don't know the truth. They don't know that the humble old house sits on land worth more than their fake dreams. They don't know about the apartment buildings. They don't know about the retail block that Le Chateau pays rent on. They don't know about the 50 years of work Evelyn and I poured into this community. If they could get me declared incompetent, if they could get a judge to grant Marcus guardianship, it would all be over. Marcus wouldn't even be the one in control. She would control him. She would liquidate everything. She would sell my home, evict my tenants, cash out my stocks. She would bleed my legacy dry, take my son for everything he had, and then disappear, leaving him in the ruins of the life I built for him. This wasn't just a fight for my dignity anymore. This was a fight for my life, for my legacy. The shaking in my hands stopped. The cold, clear-eyed calm returned. She wanted a war. She had just fired the first shot, a legal one. She thought she was attacking a feeble old man. She didn't realize she was attacking a king in his own castle. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Marcus. It was too late for that. He was compromised. I called the only person I could trust. "Jay," I said when he answered. "Isaiah, what is it now?" They were just here, Adult Protective Services. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Then I heard Jay's voice, and all the friendship was gone. It was just the lawyer. "What?" he said, his voice a low growl. "They dared on what grounds?" I calmly repeated the allegations, each word tasting like ash in my mouth. "Anonymous report, living in filth, self-neglect, forgetting to eat, and their favorite, resistant and paranoid." "Paranoid," Jay repeated. He understood. "That's the word they'll use in court. She's moving to have you declared incompetent." "I know," I said. "Okay, Isaiah," Jay said, his voice quick and sharp. "This is what we do, right now. They just poked a sleeping bear. They think they're dealing with a retired mailman. They're about to meet the CEO of Thorn Community Holdings. I'm handling this now. Where is your last physical, the full workup, the one from 6 weeks ago?" "With Dr. Samuels, my private physician. The executive package like every year." This was another part of my life Marcus never knew about. You can't run a multi-million-dollar corporation even quietly without top-tier executive health care. While I looked like a simple pensioner, my internal organs got better checkups than a sports car. "Perfect," Jay said. "The full cognitive tests, the blood work, the psychological profile. I'm picking up a notarized copy of that report right now. Then I'm going to their downtown office. I'm going to find this Ms. Davies. You do not answer your door. You do not answer your phone. You sit tight. This will be over in an hour." He hung up. I sat in Evelyn's chair. I waited. This was the longest hour of my life. I didn't worry about Jay. Jay was a bulldog in a $1,000 suit. I worried about Marcus. Had he made the call? Was he a part of this? Did he really truly believe his own father was Lu Lan? Or was he just so weak, so deep under her spell that he would go along with it just to get the house? I didn't know which answer was worse. The phone rang at exactly 4:30 p.m. I picked it up. "It's done," Jay said. He sounded satisfied. "Tell me," I said. "Oh, I wish you could have been there, Isaiah. I really do. I walked into that gray, miserable APS office. I bypassed the front desk. I walked right to the supervisor's office. This Ms. Davies, she had that same bored, judgmental look you described. She started to feed me the same tired line about anonymous concerns and just doing our jobs." Jay took a breath. I could hear the smile in his voice. "So I laid my briefcase on her desk. I didn't raise my voice. I just started laying out papers, slowly, one by one. First, the notarized 20-page medical report from Dr. Samuels stating you have the cognitive function of a man 30 years younger. Second, a full psychiatric evaluation from last year, same results signed by the head of psychology at the university," he continued. "Third, I laid out the bank statements, not your personal ones, Isaiah, the business accounts, the ones that show you actively managing a multi-million-dollar commercial property portfolio." I asked her, Ma'am, does this look like the file of a man who forgets to eat, or does it look like the file of a man who could buy this entire building and have you fired for incompetence before lunch? I almost smiled. Her face, Isaiah, it went white. I mean, white. She started stammering about protocols and just following up. I held up my hand and stopped her right there. I told her, ma'am, your protocol just ended. This was not a concern. This was a malicious, targeted, fraudulent report. This was harassment. This was defamation. And this, I said, tapping the last paper, is a draft of a $20 million lawsuit against your agency and against you personally for gross negligence and for actively aiding in an attempt at financial fraud against a private citizen. She started shaking, Jay said, clearly enjoying the memory. She said, no, we didn't know. I told her, you know now. And you know that the anonymous friend who filed this report has just committed a felony, and you are now an accessory. She couldn't shred the file fast enough, Isaiah. She ripped it up right in front of me. She personally deleted the digital report from the system. She promised it never happened. She promised this office would never contact you again. The case is closed, Isaiah. It's gone. I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thank you, Jay. You're a good friend. This isn't about friendship, Isaiah. This is about justice. But you need to understand what just happened. You won this battle, but you just showed your hand. What do you mean? Chloe or Jessica or whoever she is just failed. She tried to use the system to take you down, and she hit a brick wall named me. She is going to be furious. And now she knows, even if she doesn't know what you have, she knows you are not just some feeble old man. She knows you have resources. She knows you have a powerful lawyer. She is going to get more desperate. I hung up the phone. He was right. I felt a moment of relief, but it was cold. The immediate threat was gone. The case was closed. But the war had just been officially declared. Chloe had underestimated me. She had assumed I was weak. Now she knew I was strong. Now she knew I would fight back. And that meant her next attack wouldn't be a polite knock on the door from a social worker. It would be something far, far worse. I picked up my phone and called Jamal back. Jay, I said, the private investigator, I need you to double his budget. This is no longer just for information. This is for ammunition. The week that followed the incident with Adult Protective Services was a new kind of hell. It was a cold war. The house was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the silence of a battlefield between skirmishes. Marcus called. Of course he called. But it wasn't my son calling. It was her puppet. His voice was a strange, toxic mix of anger and confusion. Dad, what did you do? He'd yelled through the phone. I don't know what you said to those APS people, but they called Chloe. They questioned her. They treated her like a criminal. You humiliated her. I told them the truth, son, that I am fine. No, you weren't fine. You were paranoid. You embarrassed me, Dad. You embarrassed us. He'd hung up on me. I didn't call him back. What was there to say? He was in her grip. He was seeing the world through her eyes, believing her lies. He believed I was the problem. So I waited. I waited for Jay. I tended Evelyn's roses, their thorns pricking my fingers, reminding me that beautiful things could still hurt. I walked my old mail route not as a job, but as a ritual. I kept my routine. I kept my head down. I knew the next move had to be mine, and it had to be based on the truth. The truth arrived on a Thursday evening 1 week before the wedding. My phone rang. It was Jay. His voice was different. This wasn't the triumphant voice of the lawyer who had shut down the APS. This wasn't the voice of my friend, the man I played chess with. This was the voice of a man who had just looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. Isaiah, he said. His voice was low. You need to sit down. Are you sitting down? I sat heavily in Evelyn's armchair. The old springs groaned under my weight. I'm sitting, Jay. Just tell me. The full report from the PI just landed on my desk. It's not a hornet's nest, Isaiah. It's a goddamn snake pit. I gripped the armrest of the chair. Her name, Jay said, his voice flat and hard, is not Chloe Jensen. The air left my lungs. Even though I knew she was a fake, hearing it confirmed, it felt like a betrayal all over again. Her real name, Jay continued, is Jessica O'Malley, from a small dead-end town in rural Missouri. She has no connection to Oregon, no family named Jensen. The parents at that dinner, local actors. The PI found the agency she hired them from, cost her $2,000 for the night. So, her whole life is a lie, I whispered. You have no idea, Isaiah. She dropped out of high school at 16, hasn't worked a legitimate job, well, ever. And Isaiah, she has a record. This was it, the core. What kind of record, Jay? It's not shoplifting, my friend, it's a pattern. I could hear Jay flipping through pages on his desk. He was reading from the report. At 21, she was in Arizona. She attached herself to a 70-year-old widower, a retired dentist. He gifted her $50,000 for her education before his children stepped in and got a restraining order. The file notes she disappeared the next day. My stomach turned. A 70-year-old widower. She surfaces again 2 years later in Florida. Jay continued, his voice relentless. This time she's in Palm Beach. She's working as a private caregiver for a retired executive. 80 years old. His health was failing. She was with him for 6 months. In that time, he changed his will to include his loving friend Jessica, leaving her a modest sum of $100,000. Jay, he died, Isaiah, a sudden heart attack. The family was suspicious. They sued. They claimed undue influence. But Jessica or Chloe or whoever, she had her claws in deep. She had him sign papers. The family didn't want the scandal. They settled out of court. She walked away with the full $100,000 and an agreement to never speak of it again. I saw her face in my mind. The blue eyes, the bright smile, the way she'd looked at my old furniture with disgust. And now, I said, and now, Jay finished for me. She's here. She's 28 years old. She's run through that money. She's desperate again with over $150,000 in new debt she's racked up trying to keep up the rich girl act. And this time she found a new mark, a younger one, a respectable one, a man who could give her a legitimate name and, more importantly, an in with his supposedly wealthy, senile and vulnerable old father. The pieces didn't just fall into place. They slammed together with the force of a car crash. It wasn't about the $500,000 house. That was just the appetizer. She wasn't after Marcus's salary. She was after my legacy. The APS visit, it wasn't just a tantrum. It was her move. It was her specialty. It was what she does. Find an old man, isolate him, have him declared confused, and take everything. She thought I was the mark. And my son Marcus, he wasn't her partner. He was her tool, her key, her cover story. The key to unlock this door to the simple retired mailman and his quiet, uncounted multi-million-dollar empire. The sadness I had felt for Marcus, the fool for love, was gone. It was replaced by a cold, protective fury. This thing, this creature, had her hooks in my son. She was going to marry him in 1 week. She was going to drag him into her world of fraud and deceit. She was going to ruin his life, his name, his future, all to get to me. She's a black widow, Isaiah, Jay said quietly, pulling me from my thoughts. She's a professional, and your son is standing in the middle of her web. I stood up from Evelyn's chair. I walked to the window and looked out at my street, my neighborhood, the homes I owned, the community Evelyn and I had built, everything I had worked for, everything we had sacrificed for. It was all for him, for Marcus. And I would be damned if I let this nobody take him down. My voice, when I finally spoke, was calm. It was the calmest I had felt all week. The doubt was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was clarity. Jay, I said, I'm here. The preliminary check is over. Now the real work begins. What are you thinking, Isaiah? I'm thinking this isn't a job for a lawyer sitting behind a desk anymore. I need eyes on her. I need to know everything that's not in that file. Isaiah, we have her. The fake name, the criminal past. It's not enough, I said. It's not enough to stop her. She'll just lie. She'll cry. She'll tell Marcus we're the liars that were trying to break them up. She'll twist it. I know her type now. No. I don't just want to stop her, Jay. I want to end this. I need something she can't deny. Something final. What do you mean final? I want that private investigator. The best one you can find. I don't care what it costs. The wedding is in 7 days. I want him on her 24/7. I want to know where she's really been going when she tells Marcus she's at the art gallery. I want to know who she's really talking to. I want to know if there's another man. I want to know if there's another plan. I want the gun, Jay. The smoking gun. Jay was silent for a moment. He knew what I was asking. This wasn't just defense anymore. This was a counterattack. All right, Isaiah, he said, his voice matching my own resolve. I know a guy. He's expensive as hell, but he's a ghost. She'll never even know he's there. Good, I said. Tell him he has 1 week. Tell him I want a full report before that wedding rehearsal. I need to know exactly who and what my son is marrying. I hung up the phone. The trap had been set, but not for me. It had been set for her, and I was about to let her walk right into it right down the aisle. The private investigator was a ghost, just as Jay had promised. For 5 days there was nothing, just silence. Marcus had called me twice. The anger from our last conversation was gone, replaced by a fake, strained cheerfulness. Hey, Dad, just calling to check in. Everything's great. Chloe is so excited. We're just, in the final stretch now. It's going to be perfect. He was being coached. I could hear her in the background whispering to him. He was a puppet, and she was pulling his strings, trying to smooth things over, trying to make sure the simple old father would still show up to the wedding and play his part. I'm glad to hear it, son, I said, my voice flat. I'll see you on Saturday. I hung up, my heart aching for him. He was so lost. On Wednesday morning, just 3 days before the wedding, Jay called. His voice was different. This wasn't the triumphant voice of the lawyer who had shut down the APS. This wasn't the voice of my friend, the man I played chess with. This was the voice of a man handling something dangerous. Isaiah, he said. No hello, no how are you, just my name. The PI, Mr. Kincaid, he's got something. He's on the other line right now. He says he won't put this in an email. He says it's medically sensitive. He wants to talk to you directly with me as a witness. My blood ran cold. Medically sensitive. What does that mean? Did she hurt someone? Worse, I think, Jay said. She might be planning to hurt you or Marcus. I don't know. Just listen. I'm patching him in. Mr. Kincaid, are you there? I have Mr. Thorne on the line. A new voice joined the call. It was gravelly professional and had no emotion in it at all. Mr. Thorne, thank you for taking the call. My job is to find leverage, to find the undeniable truth. Now, Mr. Green has informed me you have the background report. You know her real name is Jessica O'Malley. You know about the fraud trail in Arizona and Florida. You know about the hired actor parents. I know all that, I said, my patience wearing thin. What's new, Mr. Thorne? Kincaid said. Is that all of that? It's deniable, at least to a man in love. She could cry. She could say she had a troubled past. She could say she was young and scared. She could say you're a rich, cruel old man trying to destroy her. She could twist it. And your son, he'd want to believe her. He was right. I knew he was. That was my biggest fear. I needed something final, Mr. Thorne, Kincaid continued. Something she cannot lie her way out of. A fact. A biological, undeniable medical fact. My grip on the phone tightened. What did you find? I told Mr. Green I was digging into her art gallery job. It's a front, of course. She barely shows up. But I also dug into her medicals. It wasn't easy. But when she was in Arizona, after the 70-year-old dentist's family sued her, she didn't just walk away with a settlement. She walked away with a serious medical emergency. I waited. The silence on the line was deafening. It's in the sealed court records from the settlement, Kincaid said. Sealed, but not sealed well enough. Mr. Thorne, 2 years ago, Jessica O'Malley underwent a full total hysterectomy at a clinic in Scottsdale. It was the result of a severe untreated infection. She has no uterus. She has no ovaries. He paused, letting the words sink in. Mr. Thorne, it is medically, physically, and completely impossible for her to ever get pregnant. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the wall, at the picture of Marcus, age 10, with the crooked birdhouse. Mr. Thorne, sir, are you still there? Kincaid's voice sounded distant. I heard Jay on the line. Isaiah, my God. I thought about the last few weeks, the pressure, the APS visit. the attempt to have me declared incompetent, her anger when I refused to co-sign the loan. Her plan had failed. She had failed to get the money before the wedding, and I suddenly realized, with horrifying clarity, what her next move was going to be. What's the one final, undeniable trap a woman like that sets for a man like my son, the trap that secures an inheritance forever, the trap that makes a man stay no matter what, a baby. I'd overheard her telling Marcus weeks ago, her voice like honey, "Oh, baby, I can't wait to start our family. I want a little boy just like you right away." It was all part of the act, the American dream she was selling him, the house, the marriage, and then the baby. If I blocked her from the money, her plan C, her final plan, would be to announce a surprise pregnancy probably just a few weeks after the wedding. A miracle baby. She would trap my son. She would chain him to her with a lie so profound, so emotional, he would never escape. He would give her anything. He would fight me for her. And she, Jessica O'Malley, she had just made her first and last fatal mistake. She had built her ultimate lie on a foundation of sand, never dreaming that I, the simple retired mailman, would have the one single solitary document that could prove she was not just a liar, but that she was biologically incapable of telling that specific lie. She thought she was playing chess. She didn't realize I was holding the card that would flip the entire table. This wasn't just evidence, this was a weapon, an absolute weapon. It was the thing that would not just expose her lies, but would vaporize her very identity. It was the truth that would finally break her hold on my son. She could deny her past, deny her name, deny her debts, but she could not deny her own biology. "Mr. Thorne," Kincaid's voice was insistent now. "Did you hear me?" I took a deep breath. The shaking was gone. The cold, clear-eyed calm was back. But this time it was mixed with something else, a profound, almost unbearable pity. For her. "Yes, Mr. Kincaid," I said. My voice was perfectly steady. "I heard you. That is exactly what I needed to know." "What do we do?" Jay asked, his voice urgent. "Do I call Marcus's lawyer? Do we send a cease and desist? Do we expose her right now? Isaiah, the wedding is in 3 days. You can't let him." "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it cut through Jay's panic like a razor. "No, Isaiah, what are you playing at? Are you insane? After everything we've found, you can't let him marry that creature." "He's going to marry her, Jay," I said quietly. "What? You've lost your mind. You're going to let him do it." "I am going to let him walk down that aisle," I said, my voice hardening. "I am going to let him say, 'I do.' I am going to let her smile at all her guests, believing she has won, believing she has secured her future, believing she has trapped my son and beaten his senile old father." "For God's sake, why?" Jay roared. "Because Jay," I said, "it's not enough to tell Marcus the truth. He's in too deep. He's in love with the idea of her. If we confront him now, he'll choose her. He'll believe her lies. He'll say we're the ones trying to destroy his happiness, and I will lose him. I will lose my son forever." I paused, looking at Evelyn's picture on the mantel. She was smiling as always. "No," I continued. "I have to let him see with his own 2 eyes exactly what she is. I have to let her show him. I have to let her walk right into her own trap." "What trap, Isaiah? What are you going to do?" I thought about that folded piece of paper, that final undeniable truth. "I'm not going to do anything, Jay," I said. "Mr. Kincaid, I want you to send a notarized, certified copy of that medical abstract from the Scottsdale Clinic to Mr. Green's office, overnight. I want it in his hand tomorrow morning." "It's already on its way, sir," the PI said. "Good. Then your job is done. Send Jay the final bill. And thank you, Mr. Kincaid. You've done well." I hung up on the PI before he could reply, leaving just me and Jay on the line. "Isaiah, this is a terrible risk," Jay pleaded. "It's the only way," I said. "Prepare everything, Jay. Have a full file ready, the criminal report, the fake identity, the hired actors, and put that medical abstract right on top." "A file for what?" "For the wedding," I said. "You're my +1." I hung up the phone. I knew what I had to do. I was going to wait. I was going to wait until the moment she felt safest. At the reception, in front of all her fake friends and her hired parents. I was going to wait for her to make her final move, for her to play her last card. And what if she doesn't? Jay had asked. I smiled grimly to myself. Oh, she will. A woman this desperate, this close to the prize, she'll see me at that wedding, the old fool who tried to stop her. She won't be able to resist. She'll try to corner me. She'll try to make one last desperate demand. She'll try to threaten me to finally put me in my place. I reached over and touched the frame of Evelyn's photo. And when she does, I'll be ready. The week that followed the incident with Adult Protective Services was a new kind of hell. It was a Cold War. The house was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the silence of a battlefield between skirmishes. Marcus called. Of course he called. But it wasn't my son calling. It was her puppet. His voice was a strange, toxic mix of anger and confusion. "Dad, what did you do?" He'd yelled through the phone. "I don't know what you said to those APS people, but they called Chloe. They questioned her. They treated her like a criminal. You humiliated her." "I told them the truth, son, that I am fine." "No, you weren't fine. You were paranoid. You embarrassed me, Dad. You embarrassed us." He'd hung up on me. I didn't call him back. What was there to say? He was in her grip. He was seeing the world through her eyes, believing her lies. He believed I was the problem. So I waited. I waited for Jay. I waited for the final report from Kincaid, and when it came with that one final devastating medical fact, I knew my path. I would wait for the wedding. I would let her play her final hand. The silence from their end was heavy for 2 days. They were regrouping, rearming, planning a new line of attack. I knew she was furious that my lawyer, Jay, had shut her down so completely. Chloe now knew I wasn't just a feeble old man. I was an old man with a very good, very aggressive lawyer. She'd be more careful, but she was also more desperate. The wedding was just days away. Her back was against the wall. It happened on the Thursday before the wedding. It was late afternoon. I was in my backyard tending to Evelyn's roses. The sun was warm on my back. I was pruning a dead branch, the simple, repetitive snap of the shears calming my mind. I was at peace. That's when I heard the car door slam. It wasn't Marcus's car. It was her white Lexus, the one the repo man was looking for. I heard the click-clack-click of her high heels on the concrete path coming around the side of my house. She didn't knock. She didn't call my name. She just appeared at the edge of my rose garden, standing there like a statue, her arms crossed. She wasn't wearing one of her soft, fake, innocent dresses. She was wearing a sharp black business suit. Her hair was pulled back in that tight, painful-looking bun Veronica, her mother, had worn. The mask was gone. This was Jessica O'Malley. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was flat dead. I didn't turn around. I just kept pruning. Snap. "Hello, Chloe. Marcus isn't with you." "This isn't about Marcus. This is about you and me." Snap. "I don't believe you and I have anything to talk about." "Stop playing your stupid, senile old man game," she hissed. The venom was out. "I am sick of it. I'm sick of your little house. I'm sick of your folksy wisdom, and I am sick of you pretending you're just a simple mailman." I finally turned to look at her. I held the pruning shears in my gloved hand. "It's not an act, Chloe. It's who I am." She laughed. It was a short, ugly sound. "You're a liar. That lawyer of yours, he didn't just shut down the APS. He threatened them with a $20 million lawsuit." Her eyes were narrowed. "Senile old men living on a pension don't have lawyers who throw those kinds of numbers around, so you can drop the act." She took a step closer, her heels sinking slightly into the grass. "You're not poor. You're just cheap. You're a miser. You're sitting on a pile of money letting your only son struggle." "My son has a good job," I said evenly. "He makes his own way." "His own way," she shrieked. "He's drowning. We are drowning. And you're here, playing with flowers." She was trembling. I could see it. The desperation was rolling off her in waves. This was the cornered animal Jay had talked about. "I am going to say this one last time, old man," she said, jabbing a finger at me. "The wedding is in 2 days. You will go to your bank tomorrow. You will get a cashier's check, and you will buy us that house on West Lake as a wedding gift." It wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand. I just looked at her. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just looked. I let the silence stretch. I could hear a bee buzzing around one of Evelyn's yellow roses. "You think I'm joking?" she said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper. "You think this is a game? You think you're smart, don't you? Sending your lawyer to scare me? You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Is that so?" I asked, my voice just a murmur. "You have one son, Isaiah, one, and he loves me. He's obsessed with me. He will do anything I say. He will believe anything I tell him." She took another step right up to the edge of the rose bushes. The thorns were inches from her expensive suit. "So here is your choice. You buy us that house, you give us the $500,000 gift we deserve, and we will be the perfect happy family. We'll visit you on holidays. We'll send you pictures of your grandchildren. We'll let you keep playing your pathetic poor game, and everyone will be happy." "Or?" I asked. Her face twisted into something truly ugly, a mask of pure reptilian malice. "Or, I will make the rest of your life a living hell." She leaned in. "I will tell Marcus," she whispered, her voice full of ice, "that you threatened me, that you came on to me, that you're a sick, lonely old man who tried to get me to leave him for you." I just stared at her, the sheer naked depravity of it, to threaten a 75-year-old man with that. "You don't think he'll believe me?" She laughed, a humorless, breathless sound. "He's already on the edge. He's already convinced you're paranoid. He already yelled at you for me. He chose me, old man. He chose me over you. I will tell him you're trying to destroy his happiness because you're jealous. I will tell him you're trying to control him with your money. I will tell him that those APS people weren't my idea. They were yours, a twisted game to make him think I was the crazy one." She smiled. It was a horrible, triumphant smile. "I will make him choose. Me, his future, his family, or his senile, spiteful, interfering father. And I promise you, Isaiah, I promise you, he will not choose you. I will cut you out of his life so completely, you won't even be a memory. You will die alone in this shack, and your son won't even come to your funeral." She stood there, breathing hard, her chest heaving. She had laid all her cards on the table. It was a powerful hand. If she'd been playing against the man she thought I was. I held the medical report in my mind's eye, the one that said she was biologically incapable of having children. I knew her ultimate final threat, the one she was saving for after the wedding, was the fake baby. This was just the violent tantrum before the final desperate move. I took a deep breath. I smelled the rich earth, the sweet scent of Evelyn's roses. "That's quite a speech, Chloe," I said. My calmness infuriated her. "Is that all you have to say? I just threatened to end your life and you're gardening." "I'm thinking," I said. I turned and clipped another dead branch. Snap. "There's nothing to think about," she shrieked. "It's a yes or a no." I turned back to her. My face was sad, genuinely sad. Not for me, for her. She had no idea. She was a moth flying into a bonfire, and she thought she was the fire. "I've given my answer already, child," I said, my voice gentle. "At the restaurant. My mind hasn't changed. I have my principles. I don't co-sign. I don't give handouts that haven't been earned." You're saying no," she whispered in disbelief. After all that, after her ultimate threat, she couldn't believe I was still saying no. "I'm saying no. I confirmed. I will be at the wedding. I will watch my son get married. I will give him my blessing. But I will not buy you a house. I will not co-sign your loan. My answer is no." For a second, I thought she was going to lunge at me right over the rose bushes. Her face went from red to a blotchy white. Her hands were balled into fists at her sides, her designer nails digging into her palms. She stared at me, and in her eyes, I saw it. The final decision. She knew she had lost this battle. She knew the threats were useless. And I knew in that instant she was already planning her plan C. The final desperate move, the baby. She was going to go through with the wedding, and then she was going to play her final trump card, the one she thought I could never ever beat. "You," she finally choked out. "You will regret this. I promise you. Saturday. You will walk into that wedding and you will be smiling. But by the time it's over, you will have lost everything." She turned her heel, digging a hole in my lawn, and stormed back to her white Lexus. I watched her go. I watched her speed away, tires screeching. I turned back to my roses. Snap. I cut another branch. No child, I whispered to the empty yard. You're wrong. I'm not the one who's going to regret it. She stood there, breathing hard, her chest heaving. She had laid all her cards on the table. It was a powerful hand, if she'd been playing against the man she thought I was. I took a deep breath. I smelled the rich earth, the sweet scent of Evelyn's roses. That's quite a speech, Chloe, I said. My voice was quiet. My calmness infuriated her. It was the one thing she hadn't planned for. She was expecting me to beg, to plead, to break. Is that all you have to say? She shrieked. I just threatened to end your life and you're gardening? I'm thinking, I said. I turned and clipped another dead branch. Snap. There's nothing to think about, she yelled, her voice cracking with desperation. It's a yes or a no. I turned back to her. My face was sad, genuinely sad. Not for me, for her. She had no idea. She was a moth flying into a bonfire and she thought she was the fire. I've given my answer already, child, I said, my voice gentle. At the restaurant, my mind hasn't changed. I have my principles. I don't co-sign. I don't give handouts that haven't been earned. You're saying no, she whispered in disbelief. After all that, after her ultimate threat, she couldn't believe I was still saying no. I'm saying no, I confirmed. I am not buying you a house. I am not co-signing your loan. I paused and then delivered the final part. But I will be at the wedding. I will watch my son get married. I will give him my blessing. My answer is no. For a second, I thought she was going to lunge at me right over the rose bushes. Her face went from red to a blotchy white. Her hands were balled into fists at her sides, her designer nails digging into her palms. She stared at me, and in her eyes, I saw it. The final decision. She knew she had lost this battle. She knew the threats were useless. And I knew in that instant she was already planning her plan C. The final desperate move. The baby. She was going to go through with the wedding, and then she was going to play her final trump card. The one she thought I could never ever beat. She finally choked out. You will regret this. I promise you. Saturday. You will walk into that wedding and you will be smiling. But by the time it's over, you will have lost everything. She turned her heel, digging a hole in my lawn, and stormed back to her white Lexus. I watched her go. I watched her speed away, tires screeching at the corner. I turned back to my roses. Snap. I cut another branch. No, child, I whispered to the empty yard. You're wrong. I'm not the one who's going to regret it. I finished pruning the last bush. I gathered the dead branches. I cleaned my shears, oiled them, and put them back in the small shed Evelyn had always called the potting office. I went inside, locking the back door. The house was quiet. It was my sanctuary. She had violated it with her presence, with her threats, but she couldn't touch the peace that was built into these walls. I walked to my bedroom. I opened the closet. I pushed past my everyday work shirts and my old postal uniform, which I kept for some reason I couldn't explain. In the very back, in a dark canvas garment bag, was my best suit. It was a deep charcoal gray. Wool. I'd bought it for Evelyn's funeral. I hadn't worn it since. I took it out and laid it on the bed. It was immaculate. I'd kept it clean. It was a suit for serious occasions. And Saturday was the most serious occasion of my life. I went to my desk. I unlocked the bottom drawer. Jay had sent the full file over by courier that morning. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't needed to until Kincaid's call. Now I pulled it out. It was a thick, simple manila folder. On the front, Jay had written one word, Marcus. I opened it. I didn't need to read the whole report. I just needed the weapons. The first page, a summary. Subject Jessica O'Malley, a.k.a. Chloe Jensen. It listed her real birth date, her real hometown in Missouri, the social security number of the dead child she was using. The second page, a printout of her criminal record. The restraining order in Arizona. The out-of-court settlement in Florida. The third page, a receipt from the Acme Talent Agency for 2 actors, Franklin and Veronica, for corporate event performance. I put those pages to one side. They were strong. They were damning. But they weren't the kill shot. A man in love could explain those away. She was scared. She made mistakes. She was protecting herself. No. I needed the one thing she couldn't lie about. I pulled out the last document. It was a single page, a certified notarized copy of a medical abstract from the Scottsdale Clinic, acquired via a legal subpoena by Kincaid. I stared at it. Patient O'Malley Jessica. Procedure, total abdominal hysterectomy, and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. She had no uterus. She had no ovaries. This single piece of paper, this was the weapon. This was the truth that would cut through any lie, any tear, any performance. She was planning to trap my son with the lie of a miracle baby. A baby that was biologically, medically, and absolutely impossible for her to have. She had built her entire final strategy on a foundation of pure fantasy, never ever dreaming that the simple, paranoid old man she was trying to rob would have the one document that could prove it. I looked at the paper for a long time. This was the end of her. And maybe the end of my son, too. I had to face that. Rescuing him might mean destroying him first. I took a deep breath. A father does what he must. I carefully folded the PI's summary sheet. I folded the medical abstract. I didn't take the whole file. I didn't need it. Just these 2 pages. I walked back to my suit on the bed. I opened the inner breast pocket, the one right over the heart. I slid the folded papers deep inside. I zipped up the garment bag. I hung the suit back in the closet ready for Saturday. The trap was set. The bait was the one thing she wanted more than anything in the world, the belief that she had finally completely won. The day of the wedding arrived, Saturday. It was a bright, cloudless sky, the kind of beautiful day that felt like a mockery. I put on my charcoal gray suit, the one I'd worn to Evelyn's funeral. It felt right. It was a day of mourning after all. I checked the inner pocket. The folded papers were still there, the PI's summary, and the medical report from Scottsdale. Jamal picked me up. He was wearing his best suit too, looking like a Supreme Court justice. He carried a slim, expensive-looking leather briefcase. "You got the file?" I asked. "Everything," Jay said. "The criminal reports, the hired actor receipts, and a certified notarized copy of the undeniable fact. You're really going to let this happen, Isaiah?" "I am," I said. "He has to see. He has to hear it from her." "It's his funeral, I guess," Jay muttered as he started the car. The venue was a country club I'd never even known existed. It was all white columns and acres of green lawn. The valet, a kid young enough to be my grandson, looked at my 10-year-old sedan like it was something he'd have to tow. We walked in. The extravagance was sickening. There were flowers everywhere, not just on the tables. They were hanging from the ceiling in great dripping chandeliers of white roses and lilies. There was an ice sculpture of 2 swans, an ice sculpture, in the middle of summer. I looked at it thinking of the electricity it was taking to keep that thing from melting. I saw the guest list. 200 people. I didn't know a single soul. They were all her people. Young, loud, dressed in bright, expensive clothes, all laughing that sharp, braying laugh of people who have never had to work for anything. This was a wedding built on lies and financed by debt. I knew from Kincaid's report that she had maxed out 2 more credit cards just to pay the deposits for all this. She was betting everything on the jackpot she thought she'd get after the wedding. I spotted Marcus standing near the entrance. He wasn't a groom, he was a hostage. He was pale, sweating in his tuxedo, his smile fixed and terrified. His eyes were darting around the room, but he wasn't looking for friends. He was looking for her, checking to make sure she was happy. "Dad," he said when he saw me. He rushed over and gave me a hug that felt more like a collision. "You came. You really came. I'm so glad." He was trying so hard to pretend everything was normal. "I told you I would, son," I said, patting his back. "I wouldn't miss my son's wedding." "Isaiah," her voice cut through the room. Chloe appeared at the top of a small staircase. She was radiant. I had to give her that. The white dress was spectacular, clinging to her, sparkling with thousands of tiny crystals. She looked like a queen. She looked like a predator in her moment of victory. She practically floated down the stairs, her smile wide and dazzling for the crowd. She came right to me, looped her arm through Marcus's, and looked at me. Her eyes were a different story. They were shining with triumph. "Isaiah," she said, her voice like honey, "I am so glad you decided to come. It means so much to us." The way she said us was a claim of ownership. She wasn't just marrying Marcus. She was acquiring him. She squeezed my arm. You look wonderful. So distinguished. It was a final insult disguised as a compliment. And then she gave me the look. A look of pure, unadulterated victory. It was a look that said, you lost, old man. I beat you. I beat your lawyer. I beat your pathetic little APS stunt. He's mine. The name is mine. And you are next. I just nodded. I played the part of the defeated father. You look beautiful, Chloe. Congratulations to you both. She smiled a victor's smile and turned to greet some other guests, dragging Marcus with her. Jamal stepped up beside me. She's good, he whispered, his voice full of disgust. She's enjoying this. Let her, I said. The higher she flies, the harder she'll fall. The ceremony was a blur. It was held outside under a ridiculous arch of flowers. I sat in the front row next to Jay. Across the aisle sat Franklin and Veronica Moulin, the hired actors, looking proud and wealthy. Chloe had probably promised them a bonus if they stayed for the whole show. Marcus's voice trembled as he said his vows. He was rushing, his eyes watery. Then it was her turn. She turned to Marcus, her eyes shining with what looked like tears, but I knew was just adrenaline. She recited her vows in a clear, loud voice. She talked about fate and soulmates and forever. Every word was a lie, and every word was a perfect performance. I do, she said, her voice ringing out full of confidence and joy. The kiss was long, and the crowd erupted. She had done it. She was now legally Mrs. Thorne. She was untouchable. She believed she had secured the bag. The reception began. The music was too loud. The champagne was flowing. I sat at my table in the back with Jay sipping my water. Chloe was the star. She was working the room, laughing her arm possessively around Marcus. She was glowing with her win, but she kept looking at me. Through the dancing, through the toasts, her eyes would find me. She'd be laughing with a guest, then her eyes would flick to my table. She was checking on me. She was checking on the one piece of the puzzle that hadn't behaved. She saw me sitting there quiet, defeated. The poor, simple old man who had tried to defy her and failed. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. It wasn't enough for her to win. She had to rub it in. She had to make sure I knew I had lost. I'd been sitting there for almost an hour. The fake parents had just given a gushing, tearful speech about their little girl. I knew the moment was close. Sure enough, I saw her whisper something in Marcus's ear, pat his chest, and then she started walking, right toward my table. Jay saw her coming. "Showtime, Isaiah," he muttered, and took a sip of his own water. She glided up to us, her white dress shimmering. "Isaiah," she said, all sweetness. "You're not dancing, and Mr. Green, isn't it? What a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you were a friend of the family." "I'm an old friend," Jay said, his voice like gravel. "Well," she said, "I was hoping I could steal my new father-in-law for just a moment. Isaiah, a word." She gestured toward the gift table just a few feet away in a quiet curtained alcove. This was it. "Of course, child," I said. I stood up slowly. I gave Jay a look. He nodded. I followed her to the alcove. It was quiet, shielded from the music. It smelled like wrapping paper and perfume. She dropped the smile as soon as we were out of sight of the guests. "Well," she said, straightening her dress, "we did it, despite your best efforts. You and Marcus seem very happy," I said. "Oh, we are," she said. "But there's just one last piece of business, a final wedding gift, you could say." I just looked at her. "This is your last chance, old man," she whispered, her voice suddenly turning to venom. "Buy us the house on West Lake." I just looked at her. I'm Isaiah Thorne, 75 years old, and I've seen too much to be rattled by a 28-year-old girl in a rented dress. She saw my silence and sneered. "You think I'm joking? You think because I'm Mrs. Thorne, now I'm going to be nice? You think I've forgotten what you tried to pull with that lawyer? With APS, you tried to ruin me. Now you're going to pay. I'm not going to buy you a house, Chloe." "Oh, yes, you are," she hissed. "Because if you don't agree right now, I will walk onto that stage where your son is waiting, and I will take that microphone." She leaned in close, her champagne-scented breath hitting my face. "And I will tell everyone I'm pregnant." She smiled a cold, dead smile. "And I'll tell them the baby is yours." I sat in the front row, my back straight, my hands resting on my knees. Jay sat beside me, stiff as a board, his leather briefcase resting between his feet. Across the aisle I could see Franklin and Veronica, the hired actors, dabbing at their eyes with silk handkerchiefs, playing the part of emotional parents flawlessly. The music swelled, some ridiculous string quartet playing a song I didn't recognize. And then I saw my son. Marcus walked out and stood at the altar. He was a wreck. He was pale, sweating in his tuxedo, and his smile was a fixed, terrified grimace. He wasn't looking at the guests. His eyes were glued to the end of the aisle, waiting for her. He looked like a man walking to his own execution, not his wedding. And then she appeared. The crowd stood. The music got louder. Chloe, or rather Jessica, glided down the aisle on the arm of her father. She was, I had to admit, a stunning sight. The dress was spectacular, clinging to her, sparkling with thousands of tiny crystals. She looked like a queen. She looked like a predator in her moment of victory. She was radiant. She was beaming. She was acting the part of the blissful, loving bride so perfectly that I could feel the adoration rolling off the guests. They were all captivated. She arrived at the altar and took Marcus's hand. He looked at her like a drowning man looks at a life raft. She looked at him like he was a prize she had just won at the county fair. The minister started talking. Words, just words. Love, honor, cherish, sickness, health. I wasn't listening. I was watching her. I was watching the confidence in her posture, the way she glowed. She believed in this moment that she was untouchable. She believed she had won. She had beaten the stubborn old fool. She had secured her future. She was now in front of God and 200 witnesses becoming Mrs. Thorne. And in my inner breast pocket, right over my heart, I could feel the crinkle of the folded, notarized papers. The summary of her life of fraud, the receipt for the hired actors, and the final, beautiful, terrible truth from the Scottsdale clinic. Every vow she was about, it was a lie. And I was holding the proof. This was the source of my calm. It wasn't peace. It was certainty. It was the absolute, unshakable knowledge of what was to come. I wasn't watching a wedding. I was watching the final act of her play, and she had no idea that I had rewritten the ending. Marcus, the minister, said, "Do you take Chloe?" My son's voice trembled. He stumbled over the words. I do. He rushed it like he was trying to get it over with, like he was afraid if he stopped, he might actually think about what he was doing. And Chloe... The minister turned to her. She turned to Marcus. She put her hands on his. Her eyes, I could see from the front row, were shining with what looked like tears, but I knew it was just adrenaline. Chloe, she began, her voice ringing out clear and strong for everyone to hear. Take you, Marcus, to be my husband, my partner, my one true love. I promise to stand by you, in sickness and in health, in poverty and in wealth, for all the days of my life. Poverty and in wealth. I almost smiled. She was certainly interested in the wealth part. I do, she said. Her voice was triumphant, and as she said it, her eyes, just for a second, they left Marcus. They flicked over the crowd and found me. She looked right at me, and she smiled. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated victory. A smile that said, "You lost, old man, I beat you. He's mine, the name is mine, and you are next." I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I just held her gaze, and I gave her a slow, small, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, "Good performance, child. Truly." Her smile faltered for a half-second. My reaction wasn't what she expected. She expected me to look broken, defeated, angry. She didn't expect calm. But it was too late. The minister said, "You may kiss the bride." They kissed. The crowd erupted in applause. The music swelled. Jay leaned in close to my ear, his voice a low whisper. "You really let him do it. You really let him marry her." I just watched them walk back down the aisle, her arm linked in his, her face a mask of pure joy waving to the cheering crowd. "The trap is set, Jay," I whispered back. "Now we just have to wait for the animal to realize she's in it." The reception was a different kind of war. The battle was over, and the victor was celebrating. The music was deafening. The champagne, which I knew was costing someone a fortune, probably on a credit card, was flowing like water. I sat at my table in the back with Jay sipping my water. We were two dark, quiet islands in a sea of screaming, laughing, manufactured joy. Chloe was the star. She was holding court in the center of the room, her white dress shimmering under the spotlights. She was magnificent in her fraud. She kissed the hired actors, Franklin and Veronica, who were playing their parts to the hilt, weeping tears of joy for their little girl. I watched my son Marcus. He was orbiting her, a pale moon to her blazing false sun. He held her glass. He laughed when she laughed. He looked empty. He was a shell. She had hollowed him out and filled the space with her own ambition. "She's good," Jay muttered into his glass, his voice full of disgust. "She's enjoying this." "Let her," I said, my voice quiet. "Pride comes before the fall, Jay. And she's flying very, very high right now." I watched her work the room, laughing, her arm possessively linked with Marcus's. She was glowing with her win. She had done it. She had pulled off the con. She was in front of God and 200 witnesses, Mrs. Thorne. She was untouchable. She believed she had secured the bag, but she kept looking at me. Through the dancing, through the toasts, her eyes would find me. She'd be laughing with a guest, then her eyes would flick to my table in the back. She was checking on me. She was checking on the one piece of the puzzle that hadn't behaved, the one loose end. She saw me sitting there, quiet, defeated. The poor, simple old man who had tried to defy her and failed. The father-in-law who she believed was now a legal and financial liability she had to manage. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. It wasn't enough for her to win. She had to rub it in. She had to make sure I knew I had lost. She had to put me in my place once and for all. I'd been sitting there for almost an hour. The band was playing some loud, terrible pop song. The fake parents, Franklin and Veronica, had just given a gushing, tearful speech about their little girl and her journey. I knew the moment was close. Sure enough, I saw her whisper something in Marcus's ear. She patted his chest, a gesture of dismissal, not affection. And then she started walking. She didn't glide this time. She moved with purpose. She was cutting a path directly through the crowd, her white dress swishing, right toward my table. Jay saw her coming. "Showtime, Isaiah," he muttered and took a slow sip of his water. She arrived, her face a mask of perfect, sweet concern. The bride checking on her new family. "Isaiah," she said, her voice like honey. "You're not dancing and Mr. Green, isn't it?" She glanced at Jay. "What a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you were a friend of the family." "I'm an old friend," Jay said, his voice like gravel. "I handle all of Mr. Thorne's investments." Chloe's smile tightened for a fraction of a second. "Well," she said, turning back to me, "I was hoping I could steal my new father-in-law for just a moment. Isaiah, a word in private." She gestured toward the gift table, which was set up in a quiet, curtained alcove just off the main ballroom. This was it. The final move. "Of course, child," I said. I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly as if my old bones were aching. I gave Jay a look. He just nodded, his eyes like steel. I followed her, my slow, steady steps contrasting with the quick, impatient tap of her high heels. We entered the alcove. It was quiet, shielded from the music by heavy velvet curtains. The air was thick with the smell of wrapping paper and her expensive, cloying perfume. She didn't wait. The moment the curtain fell behind us, the smile vanished. The sweetness evaporated. Her face up close was hard as marble. "Well," she said, smoothing the front of her dress, "we did it." "You and Marcus seem very happy," I said, my voice mild. "Oh, we are," she said. "But there's just one last piece of business. A final wedding gift, you could say, now that we're officially family." I just looked at her. I didn't speak. I didn't give her anything. My silence, my refusal to be intimidated, it infuriated her. "This is your last chance, old man," she whispered, her voice suddenly turning to venom. "I'm not asking you anymore. I'm telling you. You will go to your bank on Monday. You will buy us the house on West Lake." I just looked at her. I'm Isaiah Thorne, 75 years old, and I've seen too much to be rattled by a 28-year-old girl in a rented dress. She saw my silence and sneered, stepping closer. "You think I'm joking? You think because I'm Mrs. Thorne, now I'm going to be nice?" She laughed, that short, ugly laugh from my garden. "You think I've forgotten what you tried to pull? Sending your attack dog lawyer. Sending those pigs from APS to my door. You tried to ruin me. You tried to have me investigated. Now, you're going to pay for that. I'm not going to buy you a house, Chloe, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her rage like a knife. Oh, yes, you are, she hissed. Because if you don't agree right now, I will walk onto that stage. I will stop the music. I will take that microphone from the band. She leaned in her face just inches from mine, her blue eyes filled with a terrifying, triumphant malice. And I will tell everyone I'm pregnant. I held my ground. I just looked at her. Her smile widened. It was a horrible reptilian expression. Oh, you think that's the threat? You think I'm just going to trap your son? No, you're not that lucky. That's not the play, old man. She leaned in so close, her veil brushed my cheek. Her whisper was so low I almost didn't hear it. I will tell this entire room, your son, and all my friends, that I am pregnant. She paused, letting the moment hang, savoring her kill. And I'll tell them the baby is yours. The words hung in the air, a sick, depraved, twisted lie. She believed she had me. She believed that a 75-year-old man, a respected community figure, a recent widower, she believed that the shame of that accusation, the sheer filth of it, would destroy me. She believed that the threat of a public, humiliating, incestuous scandal would be my breaking point, that I would do anything, pay anything, to keep that word from ever being spoken. She thought she had finally found the one threat that would make me crumble. She watched me, her eyes glittering, waiting for me to gasp, to plead, to beg. She was waiting for me to shatter. I just stared at her, my face calm. I didn't say a word. I simply slowly reached into the inner breast pocket of my old suit jacket. Chloe's eyes lit up just for a second. She thought I was reaching for a checkbook. She thought she had won. I just looked at her. Her sick, twisted threat hung in the air between us in this quiet, curtained-off room. The smell of her perfume was choking. She was smiling, her blue eyes shining with a truly evil, triumphant light. She believed she had just delivered the kill shot. She was waiting for me to shatter. I didn't. I just held her gaze. I didn't tremble. I didn't gasp. I didn't even blink. I just watched her. I watched the triumphant smile start to waver just a little. My calmness was not what she had planned for. My silence was the one variable her entire sick equation hadn't accounted for. Well, she hissed, her confidence faltering for just a second. Nothing to say, old man, I just checkmated you. Now, the house, yes or no? I let the silence stretch for one more beat, 2, 3. Then I smiled. It was a small, sad smile. The kind of smile a man gives a rabid dog just before he has to put it down. That's an interesting threat, Chloe, I said. My voice was quiet, almost gentle. It wasn't the voice of a man who had just been checkmated. It was the voice of the man who owned the entire chessboard. But I have to admit, I continued, I'm a little confused. I don't even know who I'm supposed to be negotiating with. Her brow furrowed. What are you talking about, you senile old... Am I talking to Chloe Jensen? I asked, my voice still soft. The one from Oregon. The one with the wealthy parents, Franklin and Veronica, who are sitting out there right now, probably wondering where their daughter went. Her face twitched. The blood was starting to drain from it. Or, I said, leaning in just a fraction of an inch, my voice dropping even lower. Am I talking to Jessica O'Malley from rural Missouri, the high school dropout, the one with the fraud conviction in Arizona, the one who took $100,000 from a dying old man in Florida? Her mouth fell open. No sound came out. Her face, her beautiful, radiant, bridal face, it didn't just go pale, it went white. A waxy, sickly white. The kind of white that looked terrible against her expensive dress. Her blue eyes, once so bright and malicious, were now just wide and empty and terrified. What? She choked out. It wasn't a word. It was just a puff of air. What? Did you call me? I'm just trying to be accurate, Jessica, I said. You just threatened to end my life. The least you can do is tell me who you really are. She took a step back, her hand flying to her chest. She stumbled, hitting the gift table. A small silver-wrapped box fell to the floor with a dull thud. You, she stammered. You're lying. You're bluffing. You're senile. You're trying to confuse me. It was a weak, pathetic attempt to regain control. She was falling, and she was grabbing at anything to stop the descent. Am I said. I don't think I'm the confused one here. She was still trying to find her footing, her mind racing. I could see the gears turning. How could I know? How could I possibly know she was trying to build a new lie, a new wall? I knew I couldn't let her. I couldn't let her think. I had to end it. You're right about one thing, though, I said. This is a negotiation, and you've made your demand. A house, or you'll lie and say you're pregnant with my child. She stared at me, her eyes wild with panic. So, I said, I guess it's my turn to make a counteroffer. I let that hang in the air, and then slowly, deliberately, I reached my hand not into my pants pocket, but into the inner breast pocket of my charcoal gray suit jacket. I watched her face as I did it. It was fascinating. The panic in her eyes, it vanished. The terror, it evaporated. Her mind, the mind of a professional con artist, the mind of a black widow who had done this a dozen times before. It could only process this single, simple, fatal equation: old man plus knows secrets plus cornered eatles payout. She thought this was a shakedown. She thought my calm was an act. She thought my knowledge was a negotiating tactic. She thought I was just like her. She thought I was reaching for a checkbook. I saw the sneer, the ugly, triumphant sneer come creeping back to her lips. She thought she had won. After all the threats, all the drama, she thought the miserly old man was finally going to pay her to go away. So, she whispered, her confidence surging back, her voice thick with contempt. You are smart, aren't you, you old fox? You just wanted to scare me. You wanted to see if I'd back down. She let out a small, relieved laugh. I knew it. I knew you weren't poor. So, what's the offer? How much is your reputation worth, Isaiah? How much to keep your new grandbaby quiet? She crossed her arms, arrogance radiating from her. She believed in that moment that she was in complete control, that she had won, that I was a broken, defeated man reaching for my wallet to pay for her silence. I let her believe it. I let her have that one last beautiful moment of victory. My hand was still in my pocket. I made eye contact with her. I let her see the small, sad smile on my face, a smile she mistook for surrender. Oh, Jessica, I said, my voice full of that pity I truly felt. It's not a check. Her smile faltered. What? My hand closed around the object in my pocket, the single folded piece of paper. It's not a check, I repeated, pulling my hand slowly from my pocket. It's a miracle. Her smile was pure triumph. She thought I was reaching for my wallet. She thought she had won. So, she whispered, her voice thick with contempt. What's the offer? How much is your reputation worth, Isaiah? My hand was still in my pocket. I looked her right in the eye. Oh, Jessica, I said, my voice full of a sadness that she mistook for surrender. It's not a check. Her smile faltered. What? My hand closed around the object, a single folded piece of paper. It's not a check, I repeated, pulling my hand slowly from my pocket. It's a miracle. I held the small white four-folded square of paper between my thumb and forefinger. Her face, which had been flushed with victory, was now a map of pure confusion. What is that? A deed? A note? What are you talking about, you senile old? You threatened me, I said, my voice very, very quiet. You threatened to tell my son and 200 of your guests that you are pregnant with my child. I will, she hissed, trying to regain her footing. Don't think I won't. You'll be ruined. Marcus will hate you forever. That's a very bold lie, Jessica, I said. A very specific lie, and that's what I find so interesting. I looked down at the paper in my hand. So I was just curious. As a simple, senile old man, I was just wondering, how exactly were you planning to pull off this pregnancy lie? Her confusion was turning to anger. What are you? I am pregnant. I can feel it. Marcus and I, we've been, you, you're trying to trick me. She was bluffing. Badly. She was trying to read my face, trying to figure out what I knew. She was a professional con artist, and her brain was working a mile a minute, trying to calculate the new odds. I just shook my head, slowly, sadly. No child, I said. The game is over. And I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a deed. It was a photocopy. A clean, crisp, clinical-looking document. At the top, in clear black letters, was the letterhead, Scottsdale Women's Clinic, a private surgical center. The second Chloe's, no Jessica's. Eyes hit that letterhead, the color drained from her face. I didn't mean she went pale. I mean she went white. A waxy, bloodless, horrifying white. The white of a corpse. Her expensive spray tan looked suddenly orange and dirty against her skin. Her bright blue eyes, once so full of fire, were now just wide and empty and terrified. She knew what that paper was. She knew what she had done in Arizona. She knew what she had settled, what she had sealed, what she had buried. And now here it was in my hand at her wedding. The one secret in the world she could not lie her way out of. You, she choked out. It wasn't a word. It was just a puff of air. You have no right. She lunged for it. It was a desperate, animalistic move. She tried to snatch the paper from my hand, but I'm 75, not feeble. I held it up just out of her reach. You made it my business, Jessica, I said, my voice hardening. You made it my business when you preyed on my son. You made it my business when you tried to steal my family name. You made it my business when you threatened to accuse me of something so filthy, just to get a house. Give it to me, she shrieked, clawing at the air. No, I said. I don't think I will. I looked past her toward the velvet curtain. I think Marcus should see it. And with a voice that didn't sound like a senile old man at all, a voice that once carried across a busy mailroom, I called out one word. Jay. The curtain was ripped aside, and there stood Jamal. He wasn't alone. Right behind him, his face a mask of confusion and worry, was my son. Dad, Marcus said, his eyes wide. What's going on? What's happening, Chloe? Why did you scream? Jessica froze. She was trapped. She looked at me. She looked at Marcus. She looked at the paper in my hand. She was a cornered animal, and she knew it. Marcus. Thank God, she cried instantly, bursting into tears, her entire demeanor changing. Baby, thank God you're here. Your father, he's crazy. Dad, Marcus said, taking a step toward me, his face torn. He's lying, Marcus, she shrieked, pointing at me. He's been saying horrible things. He threatened me. He's trying to ruin our wedding. Is that so? I said. I looked at my son. She's right about one thing, Marcus. We were discussing something. Your wife and I. We were just discussing her miracle baby. Marcus looked lost. Baby, what? What baby? Jessica saw her chance. This was it, her final, desperate, all-or-nothing move. He's twisting it, baby, she sobbed, rushing to him. He's... Oh, Marcus, I was going to tell you tonight, after the party, as a surprise. She put her hands on her stomach. I'm pregnant. Marcus's face. It went from confusion to absolute stunned, blinding joy. What, Chloe? Are you serious, pregnant? Yes, she cried, clinging to him. And your father, he tried to... She didn't get to finish. She's lying, son, I said. Marcus turned on me, his face suddenly dark with the protective rage of a new father. Don't you dare, Dad. Don't you dare ruin this. After everything, you just can't be happy for me, can you? Marcus, I said gently, she is lying. How do you know? He yelled. How could you possibly know? I didn't answer him. I just looked at my friend. Jay. Jamal stepped forward. He opened the slim leather briefcase he'd been holding. Jay, no, I said. Don't show him the whole file. Not yet. Not the criminal record. Not the fake name. Just the top page. Just the miracle. Jay pulled out a single notarized certified document. Marcus, Jamal said, his voice deep and full of a sad authority. Your father hired me weeks ago. We've been investigating your wife. This is a certified copy of a medical abstract from the Scottsdale Clinic in Arizona dated 2 years ago. Marcus was still glowing with the fake pregnancy. He didn't understand. A medical abstract? What is this? What does this have to do with anything? Jessica wasn't crying anymore. She was just staring at the paper in Jay's hand. She was completely, totally silent. Please, Jay, I said. Read the relevant finding. Jay put on his reading glasses. He looked at the paper, then at Marcus. His voice was cold, clear, and legal. It cut through the muffled music from the ballroom like a surgeon's scalpel. Procedure: total abdominal hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. Patient O'Malley Jessica. Conclusion: patient is medically and biologically infertile. The silence in the alcove was absolute. Marcus just stared, his mind not processing the words. Hysterectomy? What does that mean, Bilat? I don't understand. But Jessica understood. She let out a sound. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a cry, it was a low animal wail of pure, unadulterated ruin, a sound from the depths of her con artist soul. Marcus looked from the paper to the wailing woman clinging to him, and back to the paper. What does it mean, Dad? He whispered, his face ashen. I looked at my son, my heart breaking for the pain I was about to cause him. But it was a pain that had to happen. It was the only way to save him. It means, son, I said, my voice heavy with a sadness that was all too real, that she can't have children. Ever. It means she was lying to you just now about starting a family. I let that sink in. Then I delivered the final killing blow. And it means, I said, looking at the shattered, sobbing creature on the floor, that she was just threatening me, threatening to tell you and everyone here that she was pregnant. I paused. With my child. I watched my son's face. I watched the fog of love, the desperate, willful blindness he had lived in for months, finally horribly clear from his eyes. I watched him see, really see, the woman he had just married for the very first time. He didn't yell, he didn't rage, he just let go of her. His hands just dropped to his sides. He looked at her on the floor, and then he looked at me. Dad, he whispered. It was the voice of the 10-year-old boy with the birdhouse. Dad. And that was when Jessica O'Malley finally truly screamed. It was the sound from the teaser, the sound that stopped the wedding. It wasn't a scream of terror, it was a scream of failure. It was the sound of a con artist who had just lost everything. I held the small white four-folded square of paper between my thumb and forefinger. Her face, which had been flushed with victory, was now a map of pure confusion. What is that, a deed, a note? What are you talking about, you senile old? You threatened me. I said, my voice very, very quiet. You threatened to tell my son and 200 of your guests that you are pregnant with my child. I will, she hissed, trying to regain her footing. Don't think I won't. You'll be ruined. Marcus will hate you forever. That's a very bold lie, Jessica, I said. A very specific lie. And that's what I find so interesting. I looked down at the paper in my hand. So, I was just curious. As a simple, senile old man, I was just wondering, how exactly were you planning to pull off this pregnancy lie? Her confusion was turning to anger. What are you... I am pregnant. I can feel it. Marcus and I, we've been... You're trying to trick me. She was bluffing. Badly. She was trying to read my face, trying to figure out what I knew. She was a professional con artist, and her brain was working a mile a minute trying to calculate the new odds. I just shook my head, slowly, sadly. "No child," I said. "The game is over." And I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a check. It wasn't a deed. It was a photocopy. A clean, crisp, clinical-looking document. At the top, in clear black letters, was the letterhead, "Scottsdale Women's Clinic, a private surgical center." The second Chloe's, no Jessica's. Eyes hit that letterhead, the color drained from her face. I didn't mean she went pale. I mean she went white. A waxy, bloodless, horrifying white. The white of a corpse. Her expensive spray tan looked suddenly orange and dirty against her skin. Her bright blue eyes, once so full of fire, were now just wide and empty and terrified. She knew what that paper was. She knew what she had done in Arizona. She knew what she had settled, what she had sealed, what she had buried. And now here it was in my hand at her wedding. The one secret in the world she could not lie her way out of. "You," she choked out. It wasn't a word. It was just a puff of air. "You have no right." She lunged for it. It was a desperate, animalistic move. She tried to snatch the paper from my hand, but I'm 75, not feeble. I held it up just out of her reach. "You made it my business, Jessica," I said, my voice hardening. "You made it my business when you preyed on my son. You made it my business when you tried to steal my family name. You made it my business when you threatened to accuse me of something so filthy just to get a house." "Give it to me," she shrieked, clawing at the air. "No," I said. "I don't think I will." She stumbled back, hitting the gift table, a small, silver-wrapped box falling to the floor with a dull thud. She looked at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated ruin. She was trapped. And that's when she screamed. It wasn't the fake, manipulative cry she'd used on Marcus. It wasn't the hissing whisper of her threats. It was a raw, terrified shriek that ripped through the entire ballroom. "You've been spying on me, you sick, old bastard." The music, that loud, terrible pop song, it didn't just fade. It stopped. It died, as if someone had cut the power. The chatter, the laughter, the clinking of glasses. Everything went dead silent. In the sudden heavy quiet, Chloe's scream echoed. 200 guests turned their heads as one. They turned to look at the small curtained alcove where the bride in her perfect white dress was standing opposite the simple old father-in-law. Her face was no longer beautiful. It was a twisted mask of rage and terror. This was the moment, the click of the trap, and she had just announced it to the entire world. Her scream hung in the air. It wasn't a cry. It wasn't a sob. It was a raw animal shriek of pure, cornered terror. The music didn't just fade. It died. It was cut off mid-note as if a plug had been pulled. The clinking of glasses, the laughter, the chatter. Everything stopped. Dead. 200 pairs of eyes, 200 shocked faces, all turned as one. They stared at the small curtained alcove by the gift table. They stared at the bride in her perfect, sparkling white dress, her face a twisted mask of rage. And they stared at me. This was the moment, the click of the trap, and she had just announced it to the entire world. Footsteps, fast, heavy, panicked footsteps. "Chloe!" Marcus's voice. He ripped the velvet curtain aside, his face pale and terrified under the reception lights. "What happened? What's wrong? Why did you scream?" Behind him, I saw Jay step calmly into place, his hands folded in front of him. He was holding his slim leather briefcase, and right behind him, Franklin and Veronica, the hired actors, their faces a perfect blend of confusion and paternal worry. They were still playing their parts. Chloe, no Jessica. She saw Marcus, and in an instant, her entire demeanor changed. The mask of rage vanished, replaced by the mask of the victim. It was the most brilliant, terrible piece of acting I had ever seen. She burst into tears, real, racking, hysterical sobs. She lunged for him, clinging to his new tuxedo, burying her face in his chest. "Marcus! Oh, baby, thank God you're here!" she wailed, her voice muffled. It's your father." Marcus looked at me over her trembling head. His face was torn. "Dad, what did you do? He's crazy," she shrieked. pulling back just enough to point a trembling diamond-ringed finger at me. He's been saying horrible things. He threatened me. He's lying. The senile old man is lying. He's trying to ruin our wedding." A murmur went through the guests who were now crowding the entrance to the alcove, their phones held high recording. Senile old man. Lying. She was using the exact words from the APS report. She was trying to paint me as the aggressor, as the confused old man who couldn't handle his son's happiness. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice pleading, begging me to deny it. "What is she talking about? What did you say to her?" He was desperate. He wanted to believe her. He was still in the fog. I didn't answer him. I didn't engage with her. I didn't defend myself. I had spent a lifetime in silence. I knew its power. I just looked at my son, my heart aching for the pain I was about to cause him. I let her sobs fill the silence for a moment longer. I let the crowd press in. I let the cameras record. Then I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it cut through her fake crying like a razor. "She's right about one thing, Marcus. We were discussing something. Your wife and we were just discussing her miracle baby." Marcus looked lost. "Baby, what? What baby?" Jessica's crying hitched. Her body went rigid. She knew. She knew where this was going. "He's twisting it, baby." She sobbed, clinging to him tighter. He's... Oh, Marcus, I was going to tell you tonight after the party. As a surprise." She pulled back, putting her hands on her flat stomach. I'm pregnant." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Marcus's face. It went from confusion to absolute stunned, blinding joy. "What, Chloe? Are you serious?" "Pregnant? Yes," she cried, clinging to him. And your father, he tried to, he said horrible things about it. She was going for the kill. She was going to use the pregnancy lie to destroy me. She was going to say I'd threatened the baby, or worse, the lie she'd whispered to me. It was time. I didn't look at her. I looked at my friend. "Jay," I said, my voice calm and clear. Jamal stepped forward, his face grim. "Jay," I said, "Marcus has received a lot of gifts today, but I think it's time you give him the real wedding gift. The one we prepared." "Gift?" Marcus whispered. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Jamal didn't say a word. He just stepped up to Marcus. He placed his expensive leather briefcase on the gift table right next to a silver-wrapped toaster. He clicked the latches. They sounded like gunshots in the silent room. He opened it. It wasn't full. It just had one thick, neatly bound file. "Marcus," Jamal said, his voice deep and full of a sad authority. "Your father, he loves you very much. He was concerned. He hired my firm and a private investigator weeks ago." "Investigator," Marcus said, looking at me. "Dad, you investigated her." "He's lying," Jessica shrieked. "They're all lying. It's a conspiracy. Marcus, baby, don't listen to them." "Then you won't mind if Marcus reads this," Jay said. He handed the file to Marcus. "This," Jay said, "is your wedding gift. This is the truth." Marcus's hands were shaking. He opened the cover. I watched his face. I watched my son's world end. He read the first page. I knew what it was. The summary. Subject: Jessica O'Malley. Marcus read aloud, his voice trembling. "AKA Chloe Jensen." What is this?" he whispered, looking at her. "Chloe, what is Jessica O'Malley?" "It's a lie, baby." She tried grabbing his arm. "He made it up. It's a fake document. He's a rich, evil old man." "Keep reading, son," I said gently. Marcus turned the page. His eyes scanned the text. I saw him stop. I saw him read it again. "Arrest record. Arizona. Fraud, undue influence. Restraining order. 70-year-old. Florida. Suspicious death. $100,000 settlement." The words were just fragments, but they were building a picture. A horrible, ugly picture. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. Dad, he whispered, his face ashen. They're lies, Jessica screamed, trying to snatch the file. He's a rich old monster. He's trying to... What about this one, Jessica? Jay said. He pointed to the next page, the receipt from the talent agency. Are they a lie too? Your parents? Marcus looked across the room at Franklin and Veronica. They weren't weeping anymore. They were frozen. Franklin was already inching toward the exit. No, Marcus murmured. No, no, no. He was collapsing. He was falling apart. But I knew I had to give him the final killing blow, the one that would save him. There's one more page, son, I said. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely turn it. He looked at it. The medical abstract from Scottsdale. He read the words, total, abdominal, hysterectomy. He didn't understand. He looked up, his eyes blind with confusion. I don't... What does this... Jessica wasn't screaming anymore. She was just staring. She was defeated. She knew it was over. It means, son, I said, my voice heavy with a sadness that was all too real, that she can't have children. Ever. I let that sink in. I watched him connect the dots. The I want a little boy just like you lie, the I'm pregnant lie from 2 minutes ago. It means she was lying to you just now about starting a family. And then, the final nail. And it means, I said, my voice dropping, that she was just in this alcove not 2 minutes ago threatening me. Threatening to tell you and everyone here that she was pregnant. I paused. With my child. I watched my son's face. I watched the fog of love, the desperate, willful blindness he had lived in for months, finally horribly clear from his eyes. I watched him see, really see, the woman he had just married for the very first time. He didn't yell, he didn't rage, he just let go of her. His hands just dropped to his sides. He looked at her on the floor, and then he looked at me. Dad, he whispered. It was the voice of the 10-year-old boy with the birdhouse. Dad, and that was when Jessica O'Malley finally truly screamed. It wasn't a scream of terror, it was a scream of failure. It was the sound of a con artist who had just lost everything. That scream. It wasn't a scream of terror, it was a scream of failure. It was the sound of a con artist who had just lost everything. The sound echoed in the dead silence of the ballroom. The music was gone. The laughter was gone. 200 guests were frozen, their phones held up like hundreds of little glass eyes, all pointed at us. Marcus just stood there, his face ashen. He was trapped between his wailing, unmasked bride and his senile old father. He was looking at the paper in Jay's hand, the medical report. I watched my son's face. I watched the fog of love, the desperate, willful blindness he had lived in for months, finally horribly clear from his eyes. He wasn't seeing the beautiful, sophisticated Chloe he thought he loved. He was seeing a stranger. He was seeing Jessica O'Malley. Marcus, she wailed, trying to crawl to him, her dress ripping. Baby, he's lying. He made it all up. It's a trick. He's a rich, evil old man. He's trying to destroy us. Marcus looked at her. His face was empty. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, not with anger, but with a dawning, horrifying comprehension. It was the look of a man waking up in the middle of a car crash. He looked at the other papers in Jay's hand, the papers he hadn't even read yet, the criminal record, the hired actors. Dad, he whispered. It was the voice of the 10-year-old boy with the birdhouse. Dad. And that one word, that one simple broken word, broke her. She knew she had lost him. She stopped crying. Her face, which was blotchy and tear-streaked, twisted into something I'd only seen once before. In my garden, it was a mask of pure reptilian hatred. You bastard, she shrieked at me. You sick, lonely old bastard. You couldn't stand to see him happy, you... Chloe, stop, Marcus said. His voice was dead. No, she screamed at him. Don't you see? He's manipulating you. He's been spying on me. He's obsessed with me. He's the sick one. Marcus just stared at her, not like a husband, not like a lover. He stared at her like a stranger, like a man looking at a snake that had just bitten him. "You lied to me," he whispered. "I did it for us," she cried. "Don't you understand? For us, for the house, for our future." "The pregnancy," Marcus said. His voice was hollow. Were you lying about that too?" "He's the one lying," she screamed. "That paper is a fake. He faked it. He's trying to... But she knew it was over. Her lies were too big. The truth was too simple, too biological. Marcus looked at her, this screaming, frantic stranger in a white dress. Then he looked across the room. I saw his eyes land on Franklin and Veronica, who were frozen in terror, already trying to inch their way toward the exit. "It was all of it," Marcus whispered to himself. "The dinner, the APS, all of it." He looked down at his hands. He looked at the new gold wedding ring on his finger. And then he looked up. His face, which was pale and shocked, now hardened. It became a face I hadn't seen since he was a young man, a face of absolute cold resolve. He didn't yell, he didn't rage, he just detached. He turned not to me, not to Jay, but to the entrance of the ballroom where 2 uniformed security guards hired for the event were standing with their mouths open. "Security!" Marcus's voice was not a yell. It was a command. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years. It was the voice of my son. The man, not the puppet. The guards looked at each other confused. "Security," Marcus roared, pointing a shaking finger at the woman he had married just an hour before. "Get her out of here." "Marcus! No!" Jessica screamed, lunging for him again. "You can't, I'm your wife. We just got married." He kicked his leg, shaking her hand off him as if she were a piece of trash. "You are nothing," he said, his voice like ice. "You are a fraud. You are a liar. You are a stranger." He turned back to the guards who were now moving forward. "Get her out of my sight, now!" The 2 guards moved in. They were big men. They grabbed her by her upper arms. And that was when the real chaos erupted. Jessica stopped being a bride. She stopped being a victim. She became the cornered animal Jay had talked about. She flew at them. She screamed, a high, guttural, terrifying sound. She kicked her high heels flying. She thrashed her $100,000 wedding dress, tearing at the seams. "No, get your filthy hands off me, Marcus. You'll pay for this. He will pay for this. You're all fools. You'll all pay." Her voice was no longer the sweet, cultured tone she'd faked. It was the raw, gravelly shriek from her police report, the one from rural Missouri. The guests were scrambling back. People were tripping over chairs to get out of the way. Phones were up, dozens of them, recording every second of this humiliating, violent spectacle. This was no longer a wedding, it was a meltdown. Franklin and Veronica, the actors, were in a full panic. They weren't trying to save their daughter, they were making a run for the exit. But Jamal stepped calmly in front of them, blocking their path. "Oh, no, you don't," Jay said, his voice calm. "You 2 are staying." "Get out of our way," Franklin hissed, trying to push past. "I wouldn't do that," Jay said. He signaled to the other security guard near the door. "I believe the legal term is accessories to felony fraud. You'll want to stay and give a statement to the police." The actors froze, their faces as white as Jessica's dress. The guards were dragging her, kicking and screaming across the ballroom floor. She was leaving a trail of torn lace and scattered crystals. As they hauled her past the gift table, she made one last desperate lunge. Not for Marcus. For me. "You!" she screamed, her face purple with rage, her mask completely gone. "You did this. You ruined everything. You... Selfish old bastard." She was dragged out of the ballroom, still screaming, her dress catching and ripping on the ornate doorframe. The door slammed shut behind her. Silence. A terrible, heavy post-explosion silence. 200 guests were just staring at Marcus, who was standing alone at the front of the room, looking at the floor, his body shaking. Staring at me, the old man in the gray suit still standing calmly by the gift table. A woman in the crowd sobbed a single sharp sound. Someone dropped a champagne glass. It shattered, the sound echoing in the huge, quiet room. Marcus looked up. His eyes were dead. He walked stiffly to the stage, to the microphone, the one for the wedding toasts. The band members had already fled. He tapped it. The thump-thump echoed. He started. His voice was a dry, broken croak. He cleared his throat. He tried again. The wedding is over. He looked out at the sea of shocked faces and phones. Please, everyone, just go home. No one moved for a second. They were too stunned. Then it was a flood, a stampede for the exits. No one said goodbye. No one offered condolences. They just wanted to escape the disaster to get to their cars so they could start whispering. In 2 minutes, the entire ballroom was empty. Empty of guests anyway. It was just me, Jay, the 2 actors now being held by the security guard, and my son Marcus standing alone in the middle of a room full of dead flowers and melting ice sculptures, still wearing his wedding tuxedo. The ballroom was cleaned out. The wedding that never was. Jay handled the police who arrived after Jessica. Chloe was dragged from the premises. He presented the files. He explained the fraud. The hired actors, Franklin and Veronica, were detained for questioning, looking absolutely pathetic, their grand performance over. Jay drove me home. I didn't say a word. 3 days passed. 3 days of heavy, thick silence. I was in my kitchen brewing coffee when I heard a key in the lock. It was Marcus. He still had his key. He didn't walk in. He just stood in the doorway, his shoulders slumped. He wasn't wearing his new expensive suit. He was wearing an old pair of jeans and a faded university sweatshirt. He looked like my son again, but he was broken. "Hey, Dad," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "Hey, son," I said gently. "Coffee's fresh." He walked in slowly and sat down at the old oak table, the one he used to do his homework on. He looked at the wood grain, his hands flat on the table. He sat there in silence for a full 5 minutes. I just let him be. I poured him a cup of coffee and set it in front of him. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed and hollow. "Dad," he choked out, "I am so sorry." A single tear rolled down his cheek and dropped onto the table. I was so stupid. I was so blind. I believed her. I believed all of it. And I yelled at you. I was ashamed of you. Ashamed. He couldn't finish. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I sat down across from him in Evelyn's old chair. I didn't pat his back. I didn't say, "It's okay." I just waited. After a moment, he looked up, wiping his face. "But Dad, I still don't understand. The lawyer Jamal, he said you've been his client for 30 years, the private investigator. That must have cost a fortune. I thought," he looked around my small, humble kitchen. "I thought this was all there was. I thought you were poor." I looked at my son, my 40-year-old son who I had protected for too long. It was time for the final truth. "Marcus," I said gently, "do you remember what I told Chloe at that first dinner about this house? That you and Mom saved for 10 years to buy it," he whispered. "That's right. We did. And it was the hardest 10 years of our lives. And when we finally paid it off, we didn't stop." I stood up and walked to the old locked wooden desk in the corner. I opened it with a small key. I took out a single thick leather-bound ledger, the one I was looking at the day he first called me about Chloe. I sat back down and pushed it across the table to him. "What's this?" he asked. "That I said is us. It's your mother and me." He opened it. His eyes scanned the first page. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a list of addresses. "The Kyler Building downtown," he murmured. "That's my office building, Dad." "That's right," I said. "I bought it in 1982, the year after the city tried to condemn it. I bought it with the money I saved from working 2 jobs, the post office and stocking shelves at night." He stared at me, his mouth open. "Turn the page," I said. He did. "The apartments on Elm Street, all of them. Your mother and I bought that block in '89. The neighborhood was rough then. Everyone was running away from it, but your mother, she saw the value. She said, 'People need good homes, Isaiah.' So we bought it. We kept the rents low. We kept it clean. We built a community." He kept turning the pages. The retail block, the small motel by the highway, the land out by the new bypass. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a confusion that was so much deeper than before. "Dad, you're a millionaire." "I'm a landlord, Marcus," I corrected him gently. I'm a mailman who bought bricks. But why? Why live like this? Why let me think you were struggling? I reached across the table and put my hand on his. Because your mother and I, we didn't want to raise a rich man's son. We wanted to raise our son. We wanted you to work hard. We wanted you to build your own life, to find your own value, not just inherit ours. I sighed, a lifetime of secrets finally coming out. We didn't want to raise a boy who was focused on the shiny things, a son. We wanted to raise a man who understood the value of the bricks. We wanted you to build your own house, not just be given one. Marcus stared at the ledger. He stared at his own hands. And I watched him in that moment finally understand. He understood the $10,000 check. He understood my principles. He understood the last 50 years of his life. He finally understood his true inheritance. It wasn't the money. It was the work. He closed the ledger. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he just nodded. "Okay, Dad," he whispered. "Okay." We often judge wealth by what people show: the flashy car, the expensive suit, the grand house. But true power is silent. It doesn't need applause, it seeks respect. This story teaches us that character isn't measured by the balance in your bank account, but by how you treat those you believe have nothing. Greed screams, but dignity whispers. And when that whisper finally decides to speak, it has the power to shatter the loudest arrogance. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this story. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing more stories like this to you. Thank you so much for your sweet support. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next life story.